If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon, link is in the description. And if you guys like to request some novels, you can join my Patreon. You can also buy my Google Drive link from the Patreon shop.
Chapter 26. Between good buddies, there shouldn't be any conflicts that a meal can't resolve. If there are any, then it's 2 meals, bring out the fancy dishes, bring out the drinks, and if necessary, have another round of sparring. Then conflicts naturally resolve themselves. But if it still doesn't work out, then maybe they aren't good buddies after all. Patting his stomach while looking at Kyomu counting his money with a hint of sympathy, Kakashi felt quite content. After all the hustle and bustle, most of the money Kyomu earned ended up in his own belly. If he had another stomach, he'd surely bankrupt Kyomu as well. As Kyomu went to settle the bill and Kakashi headed to the restroom, Obito finally found the chance to have a private conversation with Rin. Rin, I was just kidding, about you, don't take it seriously, okay? Blushing, Obito fidgeted, looking nothing like his future crazy self. With her fingers fiddling with her clothes, Rin lowered her head to hide her flushed cheeks and nodded gently. We're still young. I didn't take it seriously. No, I mean, if you feel. I understand. Rin lifted her head to look at Obito. But it's too early to discuss this issue now. Can't we just be like before? Obito nodded. We will always be like before, always. Rin suddenly lowered her head, feeling a bit flustered, a bit wanting to escape from here. Fortunately, Kyomu arrived just in time. Hey, where's Kakashi? He went to the restroom, Rin immediately answered. True, he drinks the most juice, doesn't he? Kyomu shrugged. Drinking the amount of 3 people by himself and needing to use the restroom 3 times as much, he's really something. Haha. Obito couldn't help but laugh. Kyomu, you're really funny. I didn't notice that. What didn't you notice? Kakashi, with his trademark dead fish eyes, approached. Nothing. Kyomu draped his arm over Kakashi's shoulder. Let's go, to the training ground. The 4 of them left the barbecue restaurant and headed straight towards the direction of the Forest of Death. In less than 20 minutes, they reached their destination. Kakashi, who was originally bored, immediately became alert. Kyomu, today let's spar swordsmanship. Hey, can you guys ask for my opinion? Obito preempted, I think practicing ninjutsu PvP would be better, and if not, practicing genjutsu and genjutsu release wouldn't be bad either. Of course. Kyomu nodded. But I noticed Kakashi seemed to have learned a new move today. You and Rin can spar first, I'll evaluate Kakashi and give you guys a demonstration. Glancing at Kakashi, the 2 of them simultaneously stepped back, slowly drawing their respective ninja swords from behind their backs. Kakashi, you're still so short. Humph, all you have is a sharp tongue. Kakashi swung the fake white fangs in his hand. You'll shut up later. Bring it on. Advancing quickly, the 2 small figures clashed immediately. Clang! Sparks flew as Kakashi couldn't help but shake his eyes, retreating to dispel the force while making a flashy knife movement to conceal the tingling in his wrist. Such strength! Is your hand tingling? You should use a stick instead of a ninja sword. Kakashi advanced again, it's all strength without technique. I don't know what you've been training for these 2 days. Clang clang clang! Sparks flew as the 2 fought fiercely, the battle reaching a white-hot stage. It must be said, Kakashi, who inherited the White Fang's legacy, was quite proficient in swordsmanship. Even though he wasn't as strong as Kyomu, he always managed to dispel the excess force from the blade in a very clever way. They're both so powerful. Rin couldn't help but sigh. I can't even see their sword trajectories clearly, and once they change moves, I can't react. Obito, not being stubborn at the moment, agreed. In terms of swordsmanship alone, they're indeed very strong, and compared to them, Kyomu's performance is even more amazing. Rin nodded in agreement with Obito's view. The reputation of Konoha's White Fang, Hatake Sakumo, needed no further elaboration. Kakashi, who inherited his legacy, was definitely top-notch in swordsmanship among his peers. And Kyomu, without any swordsmanship inheritance, could spar evenly with Kakashi, which already proved a lot. Clang! The 2 clashed again, their figures crossing paths. Huff, huff, huff. Kakashi, panting heavily, looked at Kyomu with changing eyes. He remembered the day before yesterday when Kyomu barely lasted 100 moves against him, and although the battle was intense, he still came out victorious. But today, 100 moves had passed, and it was close to 200 moves now, yet Kyomu showed no signs of weakness. Since that's the case, Kakashi's eyes narrowed. It was time to unleash the trump card he had practiced all day today. Raiden, Hataki Sword Art, Zenkao Sekka, Instant Slash. Swish. Kakashi traced a straight trajectory, very direct, with many flaws, but correspondingly, the attack speed was faster, making it difficult for others to react. In an instant, the two passed each other. Clang! A broken blade segment fell straight down, firmly embedding itself in the ground between Kyomu's feet. At the same time, a slit appeared on Kyomu's chest area, revealing the reddish skin underneath. There wasn't a gaping wound, just a long scratch, but if it had gone any deeper, Kyomu would have been lightly injured today. Turning his head to look at Kyomu, who was facing away from him, Kakashi didn't move, not knowing what had happened to him. Clang! The short blade broke from the handle, and blood gushed from Kakashi's hand holding the handle, dripping onto the ground. How could there be so much strength? How could there be? Kakashi's mind was shocked, looking down at the torn flesh on his palm and the broken blade stuck in the ground. Suddenly turning around, Kyomu, what? How did you do that? I was about to ask you the same. Kyomu displayed the broken blade in his hand. How did you suddenly become so fast? If I hadn't reacted in time, I would have been cut open by you. Pointing to his chest, Kyomu immediately dropped the broken blade and walked quickly towards Kakashi. Is your hand okay? Kakashi shook his head. It's just a bit of torn skin and flesh from my strong grip. It'll heal by tomorrow. Let me see. Rin approached at this time, taking out the hemostatic medicine and bandages she had prepared in advance, pulling Kakashi to tend to his wounds. Of course, Rin didn't let Kyomu off the hook either, but his injuries didn't require bandaging, just some ointment. Thank you, both of them said. What are you guys doing? Why are you sparring so seriously? It's just practice. Rin wore a reproachful expression. Fortunately, you're evenly matched, but if someone were a bit weaker, the injuries wouldn't be as minor, they could be fatal. Kakashi glanced at Kyomu. I wouldn't spar with someone too weak. I hate feeling restricted. Me too. Kyomu smiled in response. But judging by the injuries, I won this match. Following tradition, the winner asks the first question. Kakashi opened his mouth to retort, but seeing the wound on Kyomu's chest and his right hand bandaged, he wisely closed his mouth. Your sudden speed increase just now, how did you do it? Kyomu asked. Kakashi considered his words for a moment. It's a move from my family's swordsmanship. I can't tell you the specifics, but the fundamental reason is that I used lightning release chakra to maximize the activation of my body's functions. Got it. Kyomu nodded. But your move just now seemed to lack a bit of refinement. You haven't completely mastered it, have you? It's just a bit off. Kakashi's face under the mask showed a hint of embarrassment. My hand isn't the real White Fang, and lightning release chakra can't cover the blade. If it could, you would have been cut in half just now. You. Kyomu shook his head. Don't think I can't tell. The real issue isn't whether it's the White Fang or not, it's that you've only grasped the superficial aspects of chakra nature transformation and can't truly utilize all forms of this move. Do you know chakra nature transformation? Kakashi widened his eyes suddenly. What are you guys talking about? What's chakra nature transformation? Obito curiously joined in. Kyomu's eyes sparkled. Really? As the first clan of the ninja world, the Uchiha, don't know what chakra nature transformation is. The Uchiha clan certainly teaches it, and even has the most comprehensive and professional literature on it in the ninja world. But Obito was raised by his grandmother, and he wasn't old enough to learn these things yet. The family's collection of books could be borrowed, but with Obito's single-digit scores in academic subjects, it was obvious he wasn't a keen reader. Of course, we teach it. Obito puffed his chest out, it's just that I haven't remembered much. Seemingly not wanting Kyomu to look down on him, Obito emphasized again, tomorrow I'll tell you guys. Okay, tomorrow it is. Kyomu wasn't in a hurry. Kids of this age couldn't withstand provocation. What he wanted, Obito could definitely provide. But for today, you and Rin should listen to mine and Kakashi's explanations first. Kyomu looked at Kakashi. You or me first? It's me. Kakashi took the lead without hesitation. My learning is more systematic, and all based on experience. It's much better than the little tricks taught by other teachers. Humph, so proud, just because your father is the White Fang, but I'm still an Uchiha, Obito retorted. Rin tapped Obito's head. At this time, you should be humble, don't be so competitive. Being reprimanded by Rin, Obito calmed down, listening to Kakashi's explanation of what Chakra nature transformation was. However, Obito was still competing silently, with a plan in his mind. He wouldn't admit to knowing less than Kakashi or Kyomu, and of course, that included tomorrow's lesson. And being friends should be reciprocal, that's the only way to sustain it. Chapter 27. Obito rarely worked hard. It's not that he was lazy before, but in terms of ninja knowledge that was automatically ignored, he now started to begin to have his own ideas. He can only understand it vaguely, but he need to be explained carefully by Kyomu, Kakashi, and Rin. Especially this afternoon, when Rin looked at Kakashi with admiration, Obito felt unable to bear it. Isn't it just about the nature change of Chakra? Regarding advanced applications of Chakra like this, there are countless books in the Uchiha library. Even in each book, there are notes left by predecessors for reference. Uncle. Obito greeted respectfully. Here to borrow books. The Uchiha ninja guarding the Uchiha library raised his eyelids. About which aspect? Books about Chakra nature change, Chakra form change, and other applications of Chakra. Looking very surprised at Obito, this well-known shame of the Uchiha actually showed improvement. This is a good thing. Wait here, I'll find them for you. Entering the library, he picked several books that had been borrowed the most by predecessors and had the most notes left behind, and then walked out of the library. Here you go, remember not to take them out of the clan's residence, not to transcribe them casually, and not to damage them. I understand, uncle. Obito nodded, took several books with both hands, hugged them, and turned to leave. Watching Obito's gradually receding figure, this Uchiha ninja couldn't help but nod, a slight arc forming at the corner of his mouth. The reason why the Uchiha clan is everyone is like a dragon is partly due to talent, partly due to the Sharingan, and finally due to the family heritage. For 1,000 years, the Uchiha clan, relying on the Sharingan, has made a big name in the ninja world, and there is no reason not to think about their descendants. With too many enemies and copying too many ninjutsu from other families, if they fall into loneliness one day, they may face being besieged or even have the clan exterminated. Therefore, the Uchiha clan's library can be regarded as the library of the ninja world. If Uchiha Madara had not taken away some crucial books when he left Konoha, the foundation of the Uchiha clan would be even stronger now. However, despite a strong foundation, the Uchiha clan's style is inherently proud. For some basic things, if they are not close relatives, they are too lazy to say, let alone urge them to train them. Isn't it a normal process to learn a lot of relevant knowledge before becoming a ninja? And Uchiha clan members who don't come to the library to borrow books are either geniuses or idiots, so there is no need to remind or care about them, forming a vicious circle. Obito is like this. The worse he performs, the fewer people come to advise him, highlighting the excellent family style. However, the grandmother who raised Obito since childhood did remind Obito a few times, but Obito always turned a deaf ear to it and never took it seriously. Back from training, hey, Obito. Yes, Granny. Obito smiled happily and talked to his grandmother very enthusiastically. I practiced a lot of ninjutsu today, including the fireball jutsu. The fireball jutsu is something Obito is most proud of. Even though he's not very proficient yet, it doesn't affect him from showing it off to make his grandmother happy. That's good, that's good. Granny smiled kindly, her gaze falling on what Obito was holding. Did you go to the library to borrow books? Yeah, there are some things I don't understand, and uncle or the older clan members are so indifferent, so I have to figure it out myself. It's about time. Granny patted Obito's head. No one urges you if you don't go, but your strength is your own. It's always good to learn more. I understand, Granny. Obito grinned. I'll go read in the room first, and today Kyomu treated us to barbecue, so you don't have to prepare dinner for me. All right. Granny smiled. Since you've made friends, 3 out of 5 of your dinners are eaten outside. Hee. Obito scratched his head, feeling not embarrassed at all, and went into his room with the books. Tonight, he must study hard. However, Obito is not good at studying. He would rather be outside jumping around than sitting on a bench staring blankly at books filled with text. It's so difficult. If only someone could explain it to me or demonstrate it for me. Obito lamented in his heart, but he didn't have the intention to violate the clan rules. If something goes wrong, it's not Obito who suffers, but Kyomu and the others. Kakashi might be fine, but Kyomu and Rin definitely can't handle it. No one can protect them, and no one is willing to support them. Just memorize it and leave the understanding to Kyomu. I believe he can handle it. Obito memorized it word by word, not thinking about understanding, just hoping to repeat it word for word to Kyomu or Kakashi. The next day, after school, near the Forest of Death, Kyomu and Kakashi had another sparring session regarding swordsmanship. Kakashi had a slight edge. Kyomu, are you a monster? Kakashi flicked his wrist and sat on the ground to rest. Your strength has increased a lot compared to yesterday, and your speed has also improved. Of course, I've been carrying weights all the time, even when I sleep. But Kyomu didn't tell Kakashi that he was also wearing weights when he sparred with him yesterday, or else this guy would go crazy again. People of this age have a strong desire to win, and the things they do are also more crazy and unreasonable, far less mature and stable than adults. Kyomu didn't dare to take this risk. Maybe it's because of the ninja sword you gave me. Kyomu sat down beside Kakashi. Thank you, Kakashi-sama. This sword is very useful. When I use it to cut, my strength unconsciously increases a lot. You don't have to say it. Hatake Kakashi rolled his eyes, and don't call me Kakashi-sama. Got it, Kakashi-sama. Without intending to correct him again, Kakashi changed the subject. Today I won, so I'll ask you a question first. Go ahead. How did you manage to increase your strength and physical fitness every day? Eat more, sleep less, and train hard. Train to death. Kyomu shrugged, but this only applies to me. The talent is there, and I'm helpless. Kakashi didn't scold Kyomu for showing off, but instead nodded very affirmatively. He could feel Kyomu's powerful talent and envy Kyomu for having such excellent talent. Another question. Kakashi looked into Kyomu's eyes. Explain to me, how can you perform hand seals with one hand? This is a bit profound. Kakashi felt a bit belittled and his tone was a bit off. Just say it, I can understand. Performing hand seals with one hand is difficult, but also simple. Kyomu explained to Kakashi, as everyone knows, ninjutsu can be performed not only through hand seals, but the purpose of hand seals is only to assist us in performing ninjutsu better. So the essence of the matter is very simple. As long as we analyze how hand seals assist us in performing ninjutsu and how they are assisted through what means, performing hand seals with one hand becomes simple. It has to be said that the passive skill reward of diligence is really outstanding. As long as you are willing to train, there is no empty-handed return. Kyomu practices several ninjutsu several times every day. With the help of this passive skill, his proficiency has reached a terrifying level. And performing hand seals with one hand to perform the D and C level ninjutsu Kyomu mastered has become his regular operation. As for other ninjutsu, Kyomu said he couldn't do anything about it yet. In addition to the proficiency, relevant knowledge points also came to Kyomu in the form of enlightenment, allowing him to understand the key points, which is knowledge and practice at the same time. Therefore, when Kyomu talked about the achievement of performing hand seals with one hand, he spoke fluently, and Kakashi not only nodded, but also didn't understand anything else. Do you understand? At this moment, Kakashi didn't feel looked down upon, and he knew clearly which was more important between face and substance. Say it again, I still don't quite understand. Okay. Nodding, he repeated it immediately. Kyomu is not a person who hides things, or he is a person who is willing to invest for the long term and doesn't care about short-term gains or losses. In summary, Kyomu treats people and things with a bit of selfishness and extreme sincerity, in order to seek greater benefits and returns in the future. Obviously, Kakashi, Obito, Rin, Might Guy, and others are the people Kyomu has invested in. And the return has come much earlier than Kyomu thought. The training experience and ninja knowledge he used to teach Kakashi and others have been fed back to him in the same way. Thank you, Kyomu. Kakashi sincerely thanked him. It's your turn next. It's still about the nature change of Chakra and the form change of Chakra. Hatake Kakashi nodded, but didn't exaggerate. What I talked about yesterday, I'll talk about it again. My father went out on a mission today, and I'm not sure when he'll be back, so Hearing this, Kyomu was a bit disappointed, but he said very beautifully and sincerely, "It's okay, what you said yesterday is enough for me to digest for a while." As soon as he finished speaking, Obito suddenly stood up, slapped his thigh, looked up at the sky with his hands on his hips, and his mouth almost stretched to his ears. "You're asking me, I know. You." Kakashi turned his head away from Obito's show-off appearance, "Unless the sun rises from the west, with your cultural level that relies on the tens place to pass the exam, you can understand. Don't look down on me." Obito sat down angrily, "Come on, let me tell you, listen, and translate it for me later." The loopholes in Obito's words are very obvious, but Kyomu didn't expose them. Instead, he listened very seriously to Obito reciting in a strange chanting tone and reciting the nature change of Chakra. Obito must have put in a lot of effort last night. Chapter 28. The joys and sorrows of human beings often intertwine. For example, Kyomu and Kakashi right now. In such a serious transmission of knowledge occasion, one shouldn't laugh, but Obito's recitation style was just too delightful and also too distracting. Like an actor with inadequate acting skills, he could keep a straight face when silent, but once he spoke, it was impossible to keep a straight face. Haha. Holding back until Obito finished reciting an entire book, Kyomu finally couldn't hold it in anymore. "Sorry, Obito, I..." "Ha ha ha." Kyomu's laughter continued, while on the side, Kakashi had already begun to clench his fists and pound the ground, looking somewhat manic. On one hand he was marveling at Obito's unique approach, on the other hand was sincerely grateful for Obito's efforts, but they just couldn't hold it in, they really couldn't. "Kyomu, I can't take it anymore." Kakashi rarely showed a childish side, "It's really too funny, I feel like I'm going to exhaust a year's worth of laughter." Obito looked at the two people laughing heartily with a black line on his face, suddenly stood up and pointed at them angrily, "Do you have any basic respect left? I was very serious just now, really serious." Indeed, Obito was very serious, which is rare. Rin spoke up fairly, but the twitching corner of her mouth betrayed her true thoughts. With Rin's intervention, Kyomu and Kakashi restrained themselves a lot and apologized to Obito in unison. The fruits of others' labor must be respected with humanity, otherwise, there might be some small problems. "Alright, I'm so magnanimous anyway." Seeing Kyomu and Kakashi's apologetic attitude, Obito's only hint of displeasure dissipated. His personality really suited making friends and was easily taken advantage of. But fortunately, Obito encountered good people. Kyomu and Kakashi were still good buddies. If talking about personal motives, who doesn't have some personal motives? The joke's over, let's get to the summary. Kyomu cleared his throat and looked at Kakashi beside him, "Do you want to go first or should I?" "You go first, let me see your level." "Then I'll go first." Kyomu took the lead without hesitation. "Obito has already said what he needed to say, what I'm about to say is just my personal understanding, and if there's anything wrong, you can stop it at any time." After more than a month of studying, tutoring, and passive skill enhancement, Kyomu was already a model student. Just by listening to Obito recite once, he accurately extracted the knowledge points about chakra nature transformation and processed them into easy-to-understand plain language. Chakra nature transformation is an advanced application of chakra, but its essence is an alternative extension of mental power and chakra control. So, to master the application of chakra nature transformation, the first problem to solve is mental power control and the improvement of chakra control. How mental power grows, I only have a half understanding, but two key points are clear: talent plus corresponding training. And the technique to improve chakra control is also very simple. A more vivid description would be embroidering flowers with your feet. I believe everyone understands this. T/N, I did, sensei. Kyomu spoke vividly, and Kakashi, Obito, and Rin listened attentively. Time passed unnoticed until sunset. "Say a couple more sentences." Obito was somewhat reluctant to stop. "Kyomu, if you were to be a ninja teacher, I'd definitely get 100 on my cultural exams. Now is not too late to call me a teacher." Kyomu half-jokingly replied, "But that's all I understand, the rest can only be figured out through practice. So, starting from tomorrow, we'll have 2 more training subjects." Kakashi took over the conversation, frowning slightly, "There's not enough time." Kyomu shrugged, "That's why becoming an all-around ninja is almost impossible." Kakashi couldn't help but agree, yet, being all-around is not that simple, time is secondary, and talent is rarely met. Kakashi, want to be an all-around ninja? Obito glanced at him sideways. I think you'd better not. I admit you're a genius, but compared to Minato, you're just... He raised his pinky finger and then used his thumb to cut off a small section. Obito was extremely arrogant as he waved it in front of Kakashi. Whenever there was a chance to hit Kakashi, Obito never missed it. Did you forget someone? Just as Kakashi was about to explode, Kyomu suddenly interrupted. Compared to Minato, Orochimaru is the true all-around ninja. Kakashi held back, and Obito fell silent. Only Rin remained confused. Orochimaru? Isn't he? Obito shook his head, choosing not to explain further, and Rin tactfully didn't continue to inquire. Rin might not know about some of Konoha's taboos, but Kakashi and Obito knew quite a bit. And Orochimaru of the Sunin was the foremost taboo of Konoha. I won't talk about character, but his talent is indeed remarkable. Kakashi carefully chose his words, but Kyomu, you should refrain from speaking too highly of him in the future. It was just casual conversation between friends. Kyomu didn't continue, instead he summarized directly, but with precedence, we can clearly see our future path. Deciding what path we'll take in the future is crucial. Turning to Kakashi, Kyomu said, Kakashi, I think you need to think carefully about whether to continue on Lord Sakumo's path or forge your own, it's crucial. Kakashi nodded, accepting Kyomu's advice. I will consider it carefully and plan the next training program. Although Kakashi was arrogant, he was very willing to listen to useful suggestions. And Obito, unlike most Uchihas, wasn't as proud and stubborn. Kyomu, what about me? What about me? Obito eagerly asked. It was evident that Obito trusted Kyomu greatly, almost unconditionally. Are you counting on activating the Sharingan or are you wondering whether the Sharingan will activate or not? Kyomu asked pointedly. Instantly, Obito fell silent, unable to answer for a moment. The Sharingan was the foundation of the Uchiha clan, all their systems were built upon it, and the other branches were just derivatives of the Sharingan, only used as transitions or aids. So, Kyomu didn't have the qualifications to give advice on Obito's future path. He didn't have the Sharingan, so why bother worrying about it? After thinking for a while, Obito looked at Kyomu very seriously. I understand what you mean, thank you, Kyomu. But there are other ways. What do you mean? Obito perked up again. You can ask your Uchiha clan members, they can definitely give you the right advice. Obito's spirits rose at first, then visibly deflated. I'm not afraid to admit it, but my clan members say I'm a disgrace to the Uchiha clan, we don't have much in common. This time, Kakashi didn't tease Obito, instead, Rin patted Obito's hand to comfort him. You don't even have to communicate. Kyomu smiled, in the Uchiha library, look at the books with the most annotations and the ones that are most frequently read, just focus on those books. When you've gone through them all and connected everything from easy to difficult, that's the path you'll take in the future, a ninja path unique to the Uchiha clan. Kyomu awakened Obito from his reverie, his mouth slightly agape as his gaze towards Kyomu changed again and again. Kyomu, you're amazing, aren't you? Obito was short of words, how did your brain grow? So, everyone is different. Kakashi seized the opportunity to step in, just like monkeys, never knowing what others are thinking. Hey? Hey! Obito suddenly realized, Kakashi, could you just lay off me for a while? Kakashi's mouth under the mask curled up, letting Obito grab his shoulders and shake him left and right. What Kakashi lost from Kyomu, he always managed to make up for from Obito. When it came to banter, he wasn't afraid of Obito. Watching the two of them goofing around, Kyomu smiled and, when he felt it was enough, he and Rin separated Kakashi and Obito, one on each side. I'm so annoyed. Obito still had some lingering anger, but he forcibly changed the subject, turning to Kyomu, Kyomu, if there are things I don't understand. Pausing for a moment, Obito stubbornly added, well, occasionally there are things I don't understand. If that happens, can I ask you for help? If I don't know either. It's okay, let's learn from each other, discuss with each other, and progress together. Obito found a reason to do this, thumping his chest loudly, after all, we're friends. Indeed, we are friends. Kyomu nodded, gently hugging Obito, as friends, we should help each other and progress together. Hey, Kakashi, what about you? Obito regained his spirits, do you want to be friends with me, Uchiha Obito, and progress together? Kakashi turned his head away without responding. Why ask, it's already a yes. Kyomu patted Obito's shoulder, Kakashi is a bit shy, don't scare him off. Kyomu, are you itching for a fight again? Kakashi glared at him. I'd be happy to hit you with the ninja knife you gave me. Kakashi fell into silence again, unable to respond for a moment. Indeed, he couldn't outwit Kyomu, that was his biggest flaw. And standing on the side, Obito watched this scene with a knowing smile, unusually calm in his heart. He was very fortunate and enjoyed meeting Kyomu and Kakashi at school. Chapter 29. Plus 100 Power Stones Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. In terms of learning, Obito had clearly been more diligent than before. Though he hadn't yet awakened his Sharingan, he could memorize things well and recite them to Kyomu and Kakashi the next day, with both of them taking turns to clarify his doubts. In this way, Obito learned quite a bit, and both Kyomu and Kakashi benefited greatly from the process. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Although this approach was detrimental to the interests of the Uchiha clan, none of the four mentioned it. After all, who would know? Even if the four of them possessed ninja knowledge they shouldn't have at their age, no one would speculate recklessly, as it could easily offend others. Moreover, few outsiders were willing to concern themselves with the affairs of the Uchiha clan. This was the consensus among most of the ninja in Konoha. After all, the exclusion of the Uchiha clan had been going on for quite some time. However, as the end of the month approached, Kyomu couldn't help but feel uneasy, mixed with a hint of reluctance. The passive skill reward of diligence was really useful, even more so than King of Nonchalance. But what would the next month's random passive skill be, and how useful would it be? That had become an unknown variable. To avoid wasting time and to prevent the next month's passive skill from being lackluster, in the days leading up to the end of the month, Kyomu appeared to outsiders as if he had gone mad, relentlessly pushing himself to the limit. Kakashi, Obito, and Rin were also influenced by his attitude. While they trained harder, they also worried that Kyomu might collapse and die during training one day. However, Kyomu had been fine all along, and his body was getting stronger every day. Eventually, the three of them gradually relaxed and once again classified Kyomu's behavior as unconventional. It's the end of the month. In the small courtyard, Kyomu woke up and couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the moon in the sky. Taking advantage of the time before the passive skill refreshed, Aragami Kyomu had also taken a nap around 10 o'clock. When he woke up, he was fully refreshed, already prepared for the refreshment of the passive skill at the turning point. Time was always precise, every minute and every second. As soon as it passed 12 o'clock, the passive skill reward of diligence disappeared, replaced by a new passive skill. Passive skill, Gourmet Critique. Skill description: during the skill's duration, learning, training, and physical recovery attributes can be crit up to 10 times. Note: this passive skill feature can only be triggered when enjoying gourmet food, and the crit multiplier varies. Only one attribute can be crit. Skill duration: 30 days. Message: life is not just about the hardships in front of us, but also about gourmet food and distant places. This one's not bad. Kyomu's eyes lit up. It's simply a boon for food lovers, very much to my liking. Patting his stomach and standing up, I'm hungry. What delicious food should I eat? After pondering for a moment, Kyomu decided to go out for a stroll. He still had enough money on him. However, in the early morning hours, there weren't many people on the streets of Konoha, and many eateries on the commercial street were closed. Only a few izakayas were still open. Of course, the red light district was bustling, but Kyomu had no interest in seeking trouble. It was just torment for his soul. After wandering the streets for 2 laps, Kyomu had gained nothing, but he had no interest in going home either. Standing at the door of Kakashi's house, Kyomu took a few glances. Kakashi's house was not big, and the decoration was very simple. There was a small vegetable garden in the courtyard, and a few chickens were raised, giving it a rural scenery. After all, Kakashi's name had a rural feel to it. Although it meant scarecrow in the field, symbolizing protection, it didn't stop father and son from yearning for rural life. Rubbing his chin, Kyomu slowly drew out the ninja blade from behind, lightly leaping onto the wall, and squatting on it to carefully observe. Kakashi's father, Sakumo, was still on a mission, so only Kakashi was at home at the moment. His heart suddenly settled. In this case, Kyomu had nothing to fear. Jumping down from the wall, his footsteps were light, making no sound, showing his expertise in infiltration. Cluck, cluck, cluck. A chicken? No, it was a hen, the kind that lays eggs. Aragami Kyomu's eyes gleamed dangerously, unable to resist licking his lips, stealthily approaching with the ninja blade in hand. Meanwhile, inside the house, Kakashi was resting, but he was already frowning in his sleep. He was highly vigilant. Slightly opening his eyes, he tilted his head to listen to the movements in the courtyard, reaching out to slowly grab his pillow. Couldn't understand why, were the ANBU patrolling just eating for free? A short blade resembling a fang was held tightly in Kakashi's hand as he quickly locked onto the position of the figure outside the window. Crash! Suddenly bursting out of the window, the short blade drew a white arc in the air, heading straight for the figure's chest. Kakashi's sudden attack startled Kyomu, but his reaction was not slow. Blocking with his blade. Clang! The splashing sparks were quite striking in the night. The few ANBU ninjas who had already noticed Kyomu's presence from a distance also became alert at this time. As they concealed themselves even more securely, they observed more carefully. What level of skill could the genius twin stars achieve, as rumored in the village a month ago? Perhaps today they could take a closer look. In the courtyard, the two of them maneuvered with small steps, constantly moving left and right. The bright flashes of the blades were continuous, and the splashing sparks were even more frequent, resembling a blacksmith's forge in the night. It could be said they were evenly matched. Moreover, when Kakashi exchanged blows with Kyomu for the first time, he already recognized him, but he didn't want to stop. Trying to sneak in to steal a chicken? What a ridiculous idea! Their speed, strength, and technique are all very good, one of the ANBU ninjas commented from afar, but there's still a gap between the two of you. There is indeed a gap, and their paths are different, his companion took over. Aragami Kyomu leans more towards practical combat. Each move is dissected, capturing the most common and cunning moves in battle, giving a sense of gathering the strengths of many. And Kakashi? Of course, he follows the same path as Sakumo-sama. He shook his head, however, it seems a bit rigid, sticking to sword techniques. If they were to fight to the death, he'd be slightly inferior to Kyomu. Indeed, one takes a wild path, gathering the strengths of many, while the other is a scholar who has never seen blood. Their sparring matches seem evenly matched, but real combat is lacking. How about you? His companion asked again. Right now, I can handle both of them single-handedly and am confident I can end the fight within a minute. At what age did you become Chunin? Glancing at his companion, the ANBU ninja couldn't help but glare at him. You already know the answer. Chuckles, the two companions left after dropping a few words. Perhaps after their duty, they could find a place to have a few drinks. After a few rounds of struggle, in Kakashi's backyard, smoke began to rise, adding a touch of warmth to the early morning of Konoha. There's also the smell of stewed chicken. Chapter 30. Plus 100 Power Stones Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. Smells good, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Kakashi replied without even lifting his head, and even picked out a few good pieces of meat from Kyomu's bowl with his chopsticks. The chicken they raised at home indeed tasted delicious. And when Kyomu tasted the first bite, he received feedback from the passive skill Gourmet Critique, gaining a X3 critical hit. It was a bit low, but for Kyomu, it was still considered a reward for his culinary skills. Men were better at cooking than women, Kyomu concluded in his past life, and he was quite skilled in 10 different ways of cooking chicken, duck, and fish. You wash the dishes and pots, Kyomu said, putting down his chopsticks. Why should I? Kakashi also put down his bowl, looking displeased. They were eating the chicken from his house, so why should he wash the dishes and pots? Anyway, they're your pots and dishes. If you don't wash them, I won't either. Kakashi was speechless, feeling like making Kyomu his friend was his biggest mistake. This guy was too much. I'm full, I'm leaving, Kyomu said, getting up and patting his butt. See you this afternoon, Kakashi. However, Kyomu still cared about his face a little. He walked a few steps and then turned back to add, during the afternoon training, I'll teach you a shortcut. What shortcut? A shortcut to becoming an all-around ninja, Kyomu waved his hand. Anyway, I'm off. Go back and get some rest. Watching Kyomu leave, Kakashi stood there for a moment. After smiling and shaking his head, he finally cleaned up the dishes and prepared to take a nap. This guy always knows what I want. Lying on the bed, Kakashi thought to himself. I hope there really is a shortcut. Satisfied with the food, Kyomu slept soundly, and when he woke up, it was already dawn. However, it's really a bit unusual. I haven't slept like this for a month. Stretching lazily, Kyomu got up to wash and unusually took his time entering the classroom. Kyomu, you're late today, Rin greeted him. Did you discuss something with Kakashi? I didn't meet him on the way, Kyomu said, looking at the empty seat of Obito. Maybe the gears of fate are starting to turn. What gears of fate? The turning point for Obito's enlightenment or downfall. What does that mean? Obito is about to be late. It's impossible. It's been 2 months since school started, and Obito has never been late once, and he's been working hard lately. Rin unconsciously defended Obito. Though her girlish thoughts were hard to read, Kyomu could understand them. After smiling silently at Rin, Kyomu turned his head again. Just watch. Sure enough, Obito was late. Although only 5 minutes late, and it was evident that Obito ran hard, being late was being late, and the fact was clear. But considering it was Obito's first time being late, their ninja teacher Shozo didn't say much, just verbally warned him once. Sitting back in his seat, Obito glanced apologetically at Rin, feeling a bit uneasy. Helping an old lady cross the road was a righteous act, completely fine. But being late made him feel like he let Rin down, yet he couldn't bear not helping, either. In any case, it was a dilemma. However, Obito believed that if he explained, Rin would understand. After all, she was so gentle and understanding. During the break, Rin approached Obito and asked about the reason, finally putting her mind at ease. Obito, are you sure you didn't accidentally guide the old lady back across the road? What do you mean by accidentally, Kyomu? Obito scratched his head. I just helped the old lady cross the road normally. What I mean is the old lady had already crossed, and you brought her back again. Haha. Rin chuckled, Kyomu, can you not be so teasing? Obito wouldn't do such a thing. I know. Kyomu smiled, just joking. Of course, I know, Obito chimed in, leaning in. Kyomu, let me tell you, this morning I also made a kennel for a stray dog without telling anyone. You're quite free. How could you call it free? It's a good deed. It is a good deed. I hope you keep it up. Of course, I can. Doing this gives me a sense of accomplishment, and it feels like a mission. Kyomu nodded and casually patted Obito's shoulder. You're truly the most talented Uchiha ever. This kind of heart has already touched the core of Uchiha's power. Obito was a bit confused, but he understood Kyomu's praise, instantly beaming with joy. He could discern that Kyomu said it sincerely from his heart, which made Obito very pleased. Of course, showing off or acting tough was also a characteristic of Uchiha, and Obito naturally possessed it. Did you notice? Obito pointed to his goggles. Just wait and see, when I take them off, I'll be the strongest man in Konoha. Kyomu nodded without continuing the topic, just chatting casually with Obito until the break was over. The second class soon began, but Kyomu was noticeably distracted. This guy Obito, the original turning point and outcome were quite a pity. He pondered inwardly. I've gained so many benefits from him, I should give back when the time comes. He hadn't figured out how to help Obito and Rin yet, but Kakashi's tragedy unintentionally came to mind. Dealing with the situation of Sakumo, Kyomu had no good solution, as they seemed to be stuck in their stubbornness, profoundly foolish. 2 more years, right? Kyomu calculated silently. To be precise, 2 years and 3 months until Sakumo is rumored to have committed suicide. He couldn't help shaking his head. I don't want to explore the specifics, but Sakumo's death and Tsunade leaving the village have indeed given outsiders the confidence to initiate the Third Shinobi World War. Although they weren't the direct triggers, the weakening of Konoha due to their actions was a fact, making it reasonable for outsiders to have ulterior motives. Calculating the time for the start of the Third Shinobi World War, I only have 5 years left of stable growth. He tightened his heart. But that's enough, and I don't need to sell myself out to Konoha. Kyomu did feel some sense of belonging to Konoha, but it wasn't strong. He wouldn't give his life for it. Regardless of conspiracy theories or other factors, the deaths of some people and the events that had happened were undeniable realities, making it hard for Kyomu to resonate with Konoha. In addition, after the death of Namikaze Minato, Kakashi had shown signs of wavering in his stance, but he was ultimately brought back to his senses by Sarutobi Hiruzen, firmly loyal to Konoha since then. This indicated that there were indeed significant problems within Konoha, and when an organization faced problems, the primary responsibility should not lie with the personnel but with the managers. I can help, even give my all, but if nothing can be done. Kyomu's heart sank. Then I'll bring Kakashi and Obito back and help them restore the village. After all, not making some waves would be pointless. A vague plan gradually took shape in his mind, while a difficult problem emerged. Might Guy, this hot-blooded guy, he's very sincere. A man who missed the grand finale by a hair's breadth, an ordinary person who approached the peak step by step through hard work, Kyomu didn't want to be his enemy. This wasn't just about respect, it was also about admiration. Kyomu was an ordinary person in his past life, and Might Guy's pinnacle and his past perseverance were things Kyomu longed for but couldn't achieve. Where there's a will, there's a way. Kyomu smiled faintly. I think I do have a knack for swaying people's hearts. If I put in some effort, Guy might even become our loyal follower. Moreover, Kyomu also knew that nurturing many people and things from an early age would undoubtedly be easier. Chapter 31. Plus 100 Power Stones Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. At 4 in the afternoon, outside the ninja school. Kakashi opened his dead fish eyes and threw a kunao at Kyomu who was approaching. Taking the kunao, Kyomu smiled and hugged Kakashi's shoulder. Good brother. I knew you wouldn't forget me. Of course, I won't forget. Kakashi struggled a bit. I'm keeping a record for you, you'll have to pay me back later. But he didn't break free from Kyomu's grasp and could only be passively led forward by him. Blood is thicker than water, I get it. Kyomu chuckled. Some of my shuriken and kunao are getting old, can you give me some new ones? Death glare. Kakashi stared at Kyomu's profile under his mask, gritting his teeth. I don't know you, we're not brothers. Kyomu, if you need, I'll bring some for you tomorrow. Obito stepped forward. Is that okay? It's fine, I don't need to spend money, I can always exchange old ninja tools for new ones with my family's uncle. Since it's not coming out of your pocket, I won't be polite. Kyomu handed over the ninja tools to Obito. Thank you, Obito. No problem. Obito smiled and took the ninja tools. Just as he was about to say something, Kakashi interrupted, you really spoil Kyomu, this freeloader. I'm not freeloading. Kyomu shook his head. I stewed a chicken from your house this morning. Today, I'll treat you guys to a good meal. That's great. Rin's eyes lit up. I know a ramen shop, it tastes amazing. Ichiraku Ramen. Kyomu, you've been there? No, just seen it, haven't tasted it yet. Then let's go. Obito ran ahead. The taste is really good, Rin and I have been there several times. Oh, Kyomu and Kakashi elongated their voices in unison, making Obito and Rin blush immediately. Don't be like this. Obito protested awkwardly in a low voice. If you've been there several times, why didn't you invite us? Kyomu teased. You're not being honest. It's not like that, it's just that during that time, we couldn't keep up with your training pace. When we went home together. Rin explained with a blush, Obito and I always passed by it, so we went for a bowl of ramen when we got hungry. I see. Kyomu nodded. Obito, I'm hungry too. But Kakashi didn't want to let Obito off easily. And it's on the way, see. I'll treat this time. I insist. Obito's forehead vein twitched as he couldn't help but make a fist and give Kakashi a punch. All you know is to tease. Ha ha ha. Laughter echoed far away as the four companions gradually walked away. Not far behind them, Might Guy watched them with admiration in his eyes, wanting to approach but hesitating, so he could only lower his head and walk in the opposite direction. It's been several days since Kyomu ran around the village, has something happened? Might Guy wondered, unable to hide his disappointment. Did he notice me, deliberately avoiding me, or? With a feeling of uncertainty, Might Guy returned home, ate his fill, and then, accompanied by his father Might Dai, went to the usual training ground as usual. Meanwhile, Kyomu and his companions walked out of Ichiraku Ramen, patting their stomachs. Eating and drinking our fill. Kyomu burped contentedly, a big smile on his face. Just now, because of a bowl of pork bone ramen, Aragami Kyomu received a X6 buff, which he planned to use in the upcoming training. With a 6 times buff, Kyomu could gain 6 times the training rewards, which sounded exciting. And the 3 times buff he got from eating stewed chicken earlier, Aragami Kyomu planned to use it for recovery, making today a perfect day. T/N, remember that each multiplier he obtained can only be used in one attribute. The 4 of them walked together and soon arrived at their usual training ground. This was a place exclusive to the 4 of them, where no one else would come to disturb them, allowing them to conduct some secret lessons. Obito naturally took the lead without hesitation. As he began to recite, Kyomu and Kakashi could hardly contain their laughter. If Kyomu hadn't pinched Kakashi upon realizing the situation, he would have burst out laughing. Staring at Kyomu, Kakashi couldn't hold back anymore once Obito finished reciting today's new knowledge. "Kyomu, why did you pinch me just now? I was afraid I'd burst out laughing. Why didn't you pinch yourself?" Kakashi's blood pressure rose. "What's wrong with you, are you having mental issues?" "Not really, I just thought pinching myself would hurt." Giving Kyomu a big eye roll, Kakashi turned away, not wanting to deal with him anymore. Seeing Kakashi being deflated, Obito grinned like a fool. But soon, Obito brought up the main topic again. "Kyomu, did you understand what I just explained? Do you want to discuss it?" "Okay, please correct me if I'm wrong, Teacher Obito." As Kyomu finished speaking, Obito immediately sat up straight and listened attentively. Kakashi did the same, no longer sulking with Kyomu. In fact, without the passive skills of Reward of Resilience and King of Nonchalance, Kyomu's learning ability had returned to its original level. And today's food buff, he didn't use it on learning speed. Nevertheless, Kyomu could still understand the knowledge points recited by Obito and refine them into easy-to-understand language. This might be the advantage of Kyomu's 2 lifetimes, his reading comprehension ability was very strong. An hour passed, and Kyomu finished explaining. Kakashi, Obito, and Rin nodded repeatedly, adding to their knowledge reserves. "A good memory is better than a good pen, today's training subjects are the new knowledge we just learned." "I can't do it." Obito couldn't hold back his pride. "I haven't figured out tree climbing yet, and for the more advanced training methods, you and Kakashi should do it first." Rin could keep up with Aragami Kyomu and Kakashi's training progress. She had a strong talent for chakra control. But seeing Obito, Rin came up with an excuse. "He fell and got bruised the other day, he can't be left alone, so I'll stay with him." Kyomu and Kakashi didn't say much, nodding and walking to a nearby place to prepare for today's training. Meanwhile, Rin and Obito went to another place to continue their tree climbing training from before. "Oh, Kyomu." Kakashi remembered what Kyomu had said to him in the early morning. "What was the shortcut you mentioned before?" The shortcut, of course, was the shadow clone technique. It could be considered one of the native cheats in the Naruto world. With several shadow clones, one could gain several times the practice speed. But this native cheat wasn't something everyone could use. If one wasn't careful, they could end up training themselves to death, which was quite common. Glancing at Kakashi, Aragami Kyomu unveiled the mystery. "Have you heard of the shadow clone technique?" "I've heard of it, but I haven't learned it yet." Kakashi was quite straightforward. "It's a B-rank forbidden technique, my father said he'll teach me next year." "Do you understand the characteristics of the shadow clone technique?" "I do, it splits the chakra evenly with the original, and can create lifelike clones that can fool even the Sharingan, Byakugan, and many other perception ninjutsu." "That's half right, and it's only about combat." Kyomu shook his head. "The most crucial aspect of the shadow clone technique is that after dispelling the clones, all their memories and experiences can be returned to the original." "What does that?" Kakashi paused abruptly, his voice stuttering. "Kyomu, are you suggesting using the shadow clone technique?" "A good reaction, Kakashi." Kyomu nodded. "Exactly, the shadow clone technique is the shortcut." Then, Kyomu warned Kakashi, "But shortcuts aren't easy to take. It's just a closer path, but the risk increases significantly." Kakashi nodded. "I'll consult my father about this, I'm sure he'll give me good advice." Kyomu nodded, but couldn't help but quip, "Having a good father is impressive, hey." Chapter 32. Sorry, having a good dad is truly remarkable. At first glance, Naruto is a story of passion, but upon closer inspection, it's a very realistic story. Rock Lee earned his title after over 200 episodes. Despite having the support of the peak of Might Guy's power, he still ended up disabled, spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair. T/N, Bulsh *T, Rock Lee peaked at Gara v/S Rock Lee fight, well, after that he kinda died. So, without a good dad, without a good lineage, one really can't make it in this world. Besides, becoming a ninja also has its thresholds. Secret techniques, forbidden techniques, special skills, need I say more? Who would teach you if you are not related to them? If Kyomu didn't have the passive skill King of Nonchalance at the beginning, even with the many C-rank and D-rank ninjutsu he now masters, considering his age and family background, he might not have been able to master them. In other words, you have to have a good family background for your talents to come to fruition. Otherwise, it's only when after you waste 6 years at the ninja school and encounter a good team leader that you'll start to have some competitiveness. Starting 6 years later, what kind of comeback would it take to make up for the lost time? Minato Namikaze might be the representative of comebacks. However, even though he achieved it, he was the most eye-catching genius among civilians. But if he didn't have the recognition of Jiraiya, his future would have been uncertain. So, the path for civilians is really narrow, and if you want to bless future generations, you can't do it without the efforts of 3 generations. Kakashi also understands this, but there are many things he doesn't understand deeply because he is the son of Sakumo. But even in the face of Kyomu, Kakashi can still understand him to some extent and comfort him in his own way. "Call me brother, I'll take you home to meet dad." Kakashi's words choked Kyomu a bit. Although it was a good thing, coming from Kakashi's sarcastic mouth, it felt different. "Go away, I feel like calling you uncle is already pretty good." Kyomu pushed Kakashi away. "Remember, once you learn the shadow clone technique, you can't hide it. Call me brother. Do you want to get beaten up? Little brother, come on, let's fight." Kakashi beckoned to Kyomu. "I happen to be itching for a fight." Clang! The ninja blade on Kyomu's back was unsheathed, and he rushed towards Kakashi in a flash. The issue of seniority must be clarified. Between him and Kakashi, only one can be the big brother or adoptive father. Clang! The blades of different lengths clashed together as their figures crossed each other, officially beginning their sparring match. With the shadows of their blades pervading the air and soil flying beneath their feet, not only were they competing in swordsmanship, but their subtle movements during their spare moments didn't stop either. Shurikens, kunaus, unexpectedly appearing from a hidden corner, and simple yet occasionally catching people off guard genjutsu were also occasionally interspersed in their attacking rhythm. If it were merely a swordsmanship competition, Kyomu and Kakashi would be evenly matched. But when various combat techniques were deployed simultaneously, Kakashi was the one who became flustered. Kyomu overwhelmed Kakashi with his throwing technique, and even with Kakashi's commonly used C-rank ninjutsu, Kyomu could form seals with one hand, effectively coordinating with his swordsmanship using the custom style. T/N, I changed the name of his sword art style. While they were in the midst of their swordplay, a fireball suddenly came at them from behind. Who could withstand that? Although Kakashi could dodge it, he lost the initiative and could only passively fall into Kyomu's attacking rhythm, gradually falling into a disadvantage. Swish! The sharp tip of the blade pressed against Kakashi's chest, while Kakashi's short knife in his hand, although aimed at Kyomu's neck, was still a short distance away and couldn't reach a vital spot. Every inch gained makes one stronger, as they say. I concede. Who said we were gambling? Kakashi sheathed his blade. And do you think you won? Who else? Kyomu also put away his ninja blade. If I were a bit more ruthless, I could have pierced you through. If I had White Fang in my hand, your head would have rolled already. Is that so? Kyomu raised an eyebrow. You understand Chakra nature transformation, right? It allows Chakra to change its nature, making it gentle while covering any weapon, thereby increasing its power and achieving different tactical objectives. Kyomu nodded. That's the principle, but that's just one of the applications of Chakra nature transformation. But I use it in my Hotaki-style sword technique, and combined with White Fang, it becomes even more unpredictable. Kakashi gestured at a distance. Just like a Chakra scalpel, although White Fang's blade is short, when infused with Chakra. Just now, that slight distance gap could have been filled, even longer than the blade of your ninja blade. A Chakra blade. Kyomu immediately understood. Using the short blade of White Fang to confuse the enemy, and then suddenly using a Chakra blade to finish off the enemy? That's pretty sinister. A method that can kill the enemy easily is always a good method. There's no distinction between good or bad methods. But you still lost just now. I won't lose in the future. Kakashi gritted his teeth, flushing. When my father comes back, I'll... Kakashi's voice abruptly stopped. Is that so? At this moment, Kyomu held a kunai covered with a layer of chakra emitting a dazzling yet dangerous white light. It looked magnificent yet perilous. How did you do that? It's nothing, just practice makes perfect. Kyomu dissipated the chakra, looking mysterious and unpredictable. As long as you practice more and initially grasp chakra nature transformation, it's quite simple. A sense of frustration suddenly surged in Kakashi's heart as he stared at Kyomu, who was earnestly explaining his insights into practicing chakra nature transformation. When did this happen? During the last 2 days of the month. Aragami Kyomu retracted the kunai and wiped the fine sweat from his forehead. But it's only a preliminary grasp. It's still quite strenuous to use in combat, and it will take some time before it can be applied in actual combat. You're really a monster. And aren't you? Kyomu retorted. You know quite a few things yourself. Just a little less than you. Kakashi grumbled, kicking a twig on the ground away. I really don't understand how you managed to initially master advanced chakra control in just a month. Don't you ever sleep? Honestly, he hardly sleeps. Training for 23 hours a day. But the passive skill rewards of diligence has disappeared, so Kyomu naturally denies it. How could I not sleep? It's just that people are born different from each other. Get lost. Kakashi's mood was very bad. He was conflicted, worrying that Kyomu was weaker than him, but also couldn't stand him being stronger than him, and still showing off in front of him. You're not worried that I'll surpass you and keep secrets, are you? Kyomu glanced sideways at Kakashi. How could that be? I'm not that kind of person. Then I'm relieved. Don't forget about the shadow clone technique, Kakashi-senpai. It's very useful for us. I know. Aren't you annoying? Kakashi rolled his eyes. You never suffer losses, and you always like to take advantage. You can't say that. Kyomu pulled Kakashi to sit down beside a big tree. Let me tell you about my insights into practicing chakra nature transformation. I guarantee you'll benefit greatly. That's about right. Kakashi muttered quietly, then reminded, no hiding secrets. Hey, buddy, I may not be good at anything else, but I won't hide secrets, especially from friends. Listening carefully to Kyomu's explanation of his insights into practicing chakra nature transformation, Kakashi gradually calmed down. Kyomu's intentions, he understand them very well. Of course, he could refuse. But as Kyomu said, he really doesn't hide secrets, teaching everything with diligence and effort. At the same time, he didn't hide his selfishness at all, although he put it subtly, his purpose was clear. He wanted to use the lineage of Kakashi and Obito to advance his learning of ninja knowledge and quickly accumulate experience. But Kakashi didn't dislike it. On the contrary, he found Kyomu to be a very genuine person, couldn't help but want to be friends with him, and was willing to cooperate with his demonstrated intentions. Obviously, this wasn't just a simple friendship in Kakashi's view, but a deeper bond, like a close friend or confidant. If combined with the local situation, it could also be called a bond. But the two of them had only known each other for a little over 2 months. Kakashi couldn't help but glance at Kyomu, who was earnestly discussing his insights into practicing chakra nature transformation. A person who treats others sincerely will inevitably make others treat him sincerely, but if he encounters a villain, the consequences will be serious. However, immediately after, Kakashi smiled inwardly. But you've met a good person, Kyomu. As a friend, I won't let you suffer losses. Chapter 33. Plus 100 Power Stones Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. The sun had already disappeared beyond the horizon, leaving Might Guy standing forlornly at the village entrance. Father, do you think Kyomu will still come? He will definitely come. Might Du reassured, patting Guy's shoulder. Even geniuses need to work hard. Maybe he's focusing on more training subjects, and physical training is temporarily overlooked. Is this what the world of genius is like? Guy's mood sank even further as he looked down at his hands. And I, apart from daily physical training, have nothing. Bang! Before he could finish his sentence, Guy was punched away. Guy, pull yourself together. Du's expression turned serious. Give your all to everything you do, and you won't regret the days of your youth. But father, my talent. Talent is innate, but youth is in our hands. Do helped Guy up from the ground. We may not control everything, but youth we can. It's the only way we can catch up to, or even surpass, geniuses. Sob. I understand, father. Tears streamed down Guy's face as, under Du's fist of love and words of guidance, he regained his firm attitude and longing for youth. In the end, not wasting the time of youth with day-to-day efforts and self-discipline was the essence of youth in the eyes of the might father and son. If Guy were given the passive skill rewards of resilience, perhaps he could train his body to the point of destroying planets or even galaxies. But there are no ifs in life. Kyomu, you're here too. Kyomu stopped his running and wiped the sweat off his forehead, greeting the father and son. Uncle, you're here too. Both father and son looked at Aragami, slightly awkward, and remained silent for a moment. The father and son were known as oddities in the village, and hardly anyone wanted to interact with them. Their interactions with outsiders were mostly limited to buying groceries and asking for prices. I'm here, of course. After all, Guy and I are the epitome of youth, and don't underestimate my dedication to youth. Du snapped back to reality, stood up, grinned, and flashed a thumbs up at Aragami while his teeth sparkled. Kyomu, keep it up. I see the eternal light of youth in you. Thank you. Kyomu nodded earnestly. I will keep going. Suddenly extending his hand in invitation, Kyomu asked, so, would you two youth ambassadors like to join me in completing the youthful feat of running 3 laps around the village together? Sob sob sob. Guy didn't expect that the thing he had been looking forward to would come to him in such a sudden manner. Tears welled up in his eyes again. Yes. All right, let's begin. Kyomu resumed his stride, and the might father and son immediately followed suit, their expressions solemn and serious. This might be the only person in the village willing to train with them and endorse their concept of youth. Let's cherish it. The village hidden in the leaves was vast. The 3 of them ran together, taking nearly 5 hours to complete the physical training of running around the village. Kyomu had never felt so tired before, but the feeling of being soaked in sweat was quite satisfying. Moreover, with the X6 training buff, Kyomu's gains were not insignificant, and his physical fitness visibly improved. But no matter how good the passive skill gourmet critique was, it was nowhere near as excellent as rewards of resilience. The days of being online for 23 hours a day were gone forever. But passive skills were just like that, each month was and will be completely random and uncertain. Huff, huff, huff. Hands on knees, Kyomu bent over, gasping for breath. Meanwhile, Guy, hanging behind him, had already entered a state of unconscious running, staggering like a zombie. Come on, you can do it. Come on, the finish line is in sight. I can't let Kyomu look down on me. Come on, run. Guy muttered to himself, controlling his body with strong willpower. With a final burst of speed, he rushed past Kyomu and collapsed on the ground. But Kyomu, with quick reflexes, caught Guy just in time, preventing him from falling face first into the mud. Du fared even worse than his son, collapsing next to Kyomu's feet. In terms of talent, Du was not as good as his son, not even in martial arts talent. Although life was not exciting, the future was still bright. Helping Du to his feet, Kyomu brought the 2 father and son together, letting them support each other as they stood. Uncle, Guy, your dedication to youth is inspiring. With Kyomu's words, the father and son regained their spirits. Stepping back, they grinned and gave Kyomu a thumbs up. Thanks for the compliment. We'll keep going. Smiling, Kyomu returned the gesture to the father and son. Then he spoke again, by the way, do you guys are still going to train later? Du looked up at the moon. Today's youth can only go this far. Then he looked at Kyomu. Will your youth continue? No. Kyomu shook his head. Continuing training will be too much for my body. I need at least 5 meals a day now. This is something that must be endured to build physical strength. Guy took over the conversation, then, somewhat impulsively, he invited Aragami, Kyomu, would you like to come to my house to taste the stew my father makes? But as soon as he said it, Guy regretted it. He felt both anxious and embarrassed. What if Kyomu refused? Kyomu, actually my father's stew isn't that good. If you... Then it's settled. And thank you in advance for your hospitality. Kyomu smiled and accepted Guy's invitation. Oh? You agreed. Why wouldn't I? Kyomu shrugged. But I have to apologize for the unexpected visit. I didn't prepare any gifts. No need for gifts. Do was very enthusiastic. Your visit to our home is the best gift. Supporting each other, the Might father and son led the way, while Kyomu followed behind at an easy pace, chatting with them about training insights along the way. The atmosphere was very harmonious. This is my home. Guy spoke softly, with a strong sense of embarrassment. It's a bit simple, but it has everything you need, I promise. It's very cozy, especially this rustic style, it suits my taste. Kyomu's words were always pleasant to hear, and his actions were genuine and natural. This made the father and son feel relieved, knowing that the other person didn't mind their poverty. It was very poor indeed. The small thatched house had only one stove, one table, one bed, and no extra decorations whatsoever. Of course, as a lower-ranked shinobi, Might Do only accepted simple D-ranked missions, and the rewards were truly meager. Moreover, without good food, it was impossible to sustain high-intensity training, and the limited money naturally made things even more difficult. Sitting naturally on a stool, Kyomu relaxed as if he were at home. This action relieved the father and son, knowing that the other person didn't despise their poverty. Kyomu is really nice. The feeling of inferiority quickly faded, and Guy seemed to have opened up, sitting beside Kyomu and talking endlessly about training and daily trivialities. Guy was actually quite talkative, but due to psychological reasons, he never dared to open up to anyone. But Kyomu was an exception, and a very good listener at that. Every word you said, he would listen attentively. Whether it had any nutritional value or not, he would pick up the conversation at the right time and never let the conversation fall flat. Socializing and interpersonal relationships were another factor in achieving success, and Kyomu surpassed most people in this world in this regard. If the Uchiha clan had someone half as skilled as Aragami, they wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable situation, disliked by people and dogs alike. Dinner's ready. Do placed a large basin on the table, filled with meat. There were also some materials resembling grass roots and bark mixed in. This is my secret nourishing stew, good for the body and tastes great. Do grinned again, showing off his signature move. Though it looked silly, it was expressed with great enthusiasm. But, we only have 2 sets of chopsticks and bowls. If you don't mind, you can use mine. It was clear that no third person had ever visited their home. And when Do said this, Guy's face turned red with embarrassment. It was embarrassing and uncomfortable. Even a bit of complaint and disdain emerged in his heart, thinking about having such a father. I don't mind. Aragami replied earnestly, interrupting Guy's thoughts. But with such a big pot and so much delicious food inside, I think it's more fun to fight for it. How do we fight for it? Of course, it's whoever's quicker gets it. Survival of the fittest, even for ninjas, eating is no exception. Father and son's eyes lit up, each taking out a kunao from their ninja pouch and sticking it on the table, just like Aragami did. So, shall we begin? Let's go. With that, the 3 of them aimed for the largest piece of meat in the pot, each trying to pick it up with their kunao. Ding, ding, ding. Not yielding to each other, the 3 of them engaged in a battle of wits and skills with their kunao, but in the end, Kyomu emerged victorious, snatching the largest piece of meat. Meanwhile, the Might father and son moved on to fight for another piece. Although they didn't give in to each other, the atmosphere suddenly became lively. It was definitely a unique family feast. As the delicious, steaming food entered his mouth, Kyomu froze in place. X10 critical buff. Delicious. Suddenly, Kyomu gave a thumbs up, his eyes forming crescent moons. Uncle, you cook really well. I envy this guy, for being able to eat this every day. Doug paused his eating motion, then broke into a big smile. If you like it, you can come over more often. While I may not be good at anything else, when it comes to attitude towards youth and cooking skills, I'm the best. Giving a thumbs up, Doug's mood was better than ever. This little guy, Kyomu, was really likable. Otherwise, how could he be a genius? End of this chapter. Comment. 11 Comment. Vote. Chapter 34, Chapter 34. Last chapter for today. I had to increase the necessary power stones for extra chapter. Sorry. And thanks for reading. Goodbye. Kyomu waved his hand, no need to see me off, I'll be back home soon. Making a casual joke, Kyomu gradually walked away under the gaze of the Might father and son. Warmth filled his stomach. Unable to help but hold his belly, Kyomu looked excited. Medicinal cuisine, it's actually medicinal cuisine. I knew it. Without some support, how could Guy sustain such intense training, and his physical fitness wouldn't keep improving? It seems like I've found a treasure. In the world of shinobi, poverty and martial arts are no mere words. The Might family's financial situation is so poor that food definitely takes up a large portion of their expenses. After all, building up the body through rigorous training requires a lot of nutrition intake. Without finding ways to eat well and appropriately, the body won't withstand the training. My body feels warm, although the previous fatigue is still there, it has weakened a lot. Feeling the benefits the medicinal cuisine brought to his body, Aragami Kyomu made up his mind, I must come over for meals every day. As for compensation, let Kakashi and Obito handle it. After all, I don't have money. His mind was set. Kyomu returned home with energy, trained for a while, and then happily added the 3 times critical hit gained from eating stewed chicken to his body's recovery attribute before happily entering dreamland. But for Might Guy, tonight was a sleepless night. Tossing and turning, Guy spoke to his father, Father, do you think Kyomu will become friends with me? Don't underestimate yourself, Guy. Although Might was uncertain, he comforted his son, Kyomu seemed very happy today. He should come back tomorrow. Really? Guy's eyes brightened, Kyomu will really come back. Of course, when has your father ever lied to you? Do patted his head, youth won't let down anyone who is prepared. Your father have been preparing for a long time, even your share, I've prepared it. Dash. Guy went to school with dark circles under his eyes, unusually greeting Kyomu. Kyomu responded with a big smile, very warmly. Guy felt relieved. Kyomu, when did you become friends with Guy? Obito's eyes were scrutinizing as he leaned in to question Kyomu. Hey, watch your words. Kyomu nudged Obito's shoulder, what do you mean by becoming friends? It's about charisma, you know. Haha, Kyomu is still as popular with boys as ever. Rin laughed, you're almost becoming an enemy of the girls. It seems like not many girls like Obito or Guy, hey. Have you forgotten about Kakashi? Obito's face darkened, that Guy's half-body portrait is cherished like a treasure by those little girls. I feel like I undersold them back then. Kyomu lamented, but I promised Kakashi, so it's a pity. Locking eyes with Obito, Kyomu seemed to hesitate for a moment before gradually making his meaning clear. Birds of a feather flock together. Obito had learned quite a bit of tactfulness. Is it, can I sell it? 70-30 split, that's it. Kyomu decisively decided, pay the deposit first, deliver it at noon break. At noon, Kakashi's portrait in the hall became a hot commodity again. Kyomu and Obito made a fortune, leaving Rin twitching her mouth on the side. These two guys were becoming more and more in sync, and Obito was also learning a lot of mischief from Kyomu. Slightly headache-inducing, Rin didn't know whether to stop them or let it be. And Kakashi, he was probably going to go crazy. Rin suddenly blushed. She had noticed the portrait drawn by Kyomu, Kakashi's well-defined abdominal muscles were clearly visible. How could little girls resist it, and how could Kakashi himself not go crazy? Sure enough, when school ended in the afternoon, Kakashi went crazy. He chased Kyomu and Obito all over the place. After being suppressed 2 against 1, he finally had to calm down. Let me go. Kakashi struggled desperately, 1-on-1, have the guts to face me. Kyomu sat on Kakashi's back, raised his hand and tapped his head, as a ninja, you should adapt to situations where there are more opponents than you. And from your performance just now, you are not qualified. Yes, that's right. Obito smirked triumphantly, sitting on Kakashi's leg, he even gave him a couple of slaps on the calf. Kakashi, you can't say anything now, right? I won. Bastard. Kakashi hoarsely shouted, Obito, you, how did you win me, do you have any face? Anyway, I won. Obito didn't care at all, Kashi, you're not that great either. Don't call me Kashi. Kakashi, those girls really like you. Obito teased mercilessly, I sold a lot, earned. Before he could finish speaking, Kyomu suddenly stood up, and Obito's voice stopped abruptly. Bang, bang, bang. Watching the two struggling on the ground, Kyomu clapped his hands and waited for a while before pulling them apart. Kakashi had to let out his anger, or else for the next 2 or 3 days, Don't expect to see him in a good mood. As for Obito's words, well, he won against Kakashi once, so taking a little loss wasn't a big deal. Kyomu, you're really this kind of person. Obito rubbed his bruised lips, looking resentful. If it weren't for the goggles protecting him just now, his eyes would have definitely been injured, which would have been a big deal. Humph, you're just realizing it now. Kakashi rolled his eyes, he hasn't stopped with his bad ideas. Did you think this was the first time? Hey, don't badmouth me in front of my face, okay? Kyomu crossed his arms, and I have a reason for what I did, okay? What reason? Kakashi didn't believe it at all. Isn't it just because you're short of money that you came up with such a nasty trick? And when you have money, you have to pay back what you owe me. Kakashi began counting on his fingers, 2 ninja swords, 1 chicken, 1 egg, and 2 meals. You remember that so clearly? Kyomu was stunned. Brothers settle accounts clearly, that's what you said. I don't acknowledge you as my brother. Kyomu joked, while Kakashi just turned his head away, too lazy to argue with him. Alright, let's get to the point. Kyomu looked mysterious. I'll tell you, I've found a very special delicacy that will make you drool. Really Kyomu, why are you slacking off again? Obito was a bit helpless. You've been very lazy recently, focusing all your thoughts on finding food. This delicacy is definitely extraordinary. Kyomu patted his chest, I guarantee it. Then let's go try it after training ends. Kakashi became interested, consider it a reward for ourselves after a hard day's work. Sure. Obito and Rin agreed. The 4 of them stopped chatting and quickly entered a focused training state. Without hesitation, Kyomu used the tenfold critical hit he obtained last night in training. The tenfold boost allowed him to quickly improve the skills he had mastered before. By the time the sun set, Kakashi, Obito, and Rin were feeling a bit nervous. It was time for the crazy physical training. Run around the village. Kyomu pointed ahead, we'll stop by to taste the delicacies. But let me tell you in advance, everyone has to bring gifts. Can't we just pay? We're not going to a restaurant, we're going to someone's house. Kakashi, Obito, and Rin glanced at each other, although they were puzzled, they decided to follow Kyomu's lead. Let's just go visit. They weren't social inepts. And the family Kyomu selected were definitely not bad, on the contrary, they would possess some kind of trait that made people unconsciously drawn to them. Because Kyomu was that kind of person. Chapter 35. In the small and rudimentary thatched hut, it was currently packed with people. There were also quite a few gifts brought to the door, mostly fruits and vegetables, but under Kyomu's instructions or perhaps coercion, Kakashi brought half a side of beef. Buying beef made Kakashi feel a bit distressed, staring blankly at his wallet, realizing that not a penny of his monthly allowance remained. Even the money earned from partnering with Kyomu to sell Kakashi's portraits was all gone. Do was taken aback. He had expected Kyomu to return today, but he hadn't anticipated Kyomu bringing friends along. Although they didn't announce their arrival, Kyomu and his group were very polite, not arousing any displeasure. After all, they didn't come empty-handed to freeload for a meal, especially with Kakashi bringing half a side of beef as a contribution, enough for everyone to feast on heartily, with plenty left over. After standing still for a moment, Do's excitement couldn't be concealed any longer. Guy might not have deep sentiments, he was more concerned about finally making friends, especially so many at once. But Might Do was different. Despite being a perennial genin, after years of struggling at the bottom, even the most wooden-headed person would have moments of enlightenment. Small individuals have their own wisdom, and Might Do was no exception. Despite Kyomu and his group still being young, they represented the future. Although Kyomu and his companions didn't offer much help to the current Do, they could greatly benefit Guy in the future. Let's not talk about distant matters, as long as Guy could integrate into this small circle, although his strength might not skyrocket, his progress would definitely be much faster than it is now. The learning and training environment can fundamentally change a person. Moreover, when the future Ninja Academy graduates, Guy might also bask in Kyomu's glory and be assigned to a good ninja teacher. Furthermore, when facing future missions or wars, having this connection would greatly increase the chances of survival. Do understood this very well, but he also had his pride. He didn't go overboard with flattery, just showed his utmost enthusiasm in entertaining today's guests. However, Kyomu and his group didn't act condescendingly either, nor did they look down on the poor reputation of the Might family. Kyomu was also quite astute, making efforts to integrate Kakashi, Might Guy and Rin into the group. Kakashi, let's go to the forest and cut down a few trees to make a big table and some chairs. Kyomu had become the leader of the four-person group. Obito and Rin, help Uncle Do. There will be benefits for you later. The three nodded and busied themselves with their respective tasks. Of course, the Might father and son weren't idle either. Taking out what little money they had left at home, Might Do sent his son to the store to buy some bowls and chopsticks, while he himself, along with Rin and Obito, hurriedly made a fire and cooked. Not far from the Might family's home, Kakashi chopped down a not-so-big tree. Kyomu, what are you planning to do this time? Kakashi knew Kyomu quite well. Although this friend of his was sincere, his sincerity was conditional, much like how Kakashi chose his friends, he couldn't be bothered with people lacking potential. This was the principle of birds of a feather flock together, unchanging throughout history, not because of snobbishness or selfishness. Just here for a meal. Kyomu didn't stop his hands, busy dealing with branches. Uncle Do is a master, and after eating his stewed meat, you won't find any faults. It's not just stewed meat, is it? Kakashi wielded his kunao-like knife, cutting through the trunk, chatting with Kyomu as they worked. Of course, it's not just stewed meat. Kyomu chuckled lightly. Uncle Do makes medicinal cuisine, which is good for the body. Medicinal cuisine? Kakashi didn't quite understand. What's that? In short, it's meat stewed by Uncle Do. Besides being delicious, it also contains some secret medicine, which is very beneficial for the body and cultivation. Like the secret medicine pills of the Akimichi clan. Kakashi suddenly understood. So, that's what you're aiming for. You can't say it like that. It's because Uncle Do is a good person that I got closer and discovered this treasure. You've always been lucky. Kakashi shrugged. I wonder where you get that kind of luck from. People who know how to handle themselves don't lack luck. Kakashi didn't respond because Kyomu was right. Whether you were a good person wasn't for you to decide, but others. And people who know how to handle themselves can showcase themselves, making others desire to understand them, unlike those who wouldn't even bother. Their situation should be similar to the Uchihas. While Kyomu and Kakashi were busy, Guy returned with new bowls and chopsticks and actively joined them in their tasks. With Guy's addition, the speed naturally increased. The three of them finished making the table and chairs in just over an hour. Although a bit rudimentary, it was good enough for a meal. Meanwhile, good news came from the Might household, dinner would be ready in another 30 minutes. However, Kyomu and Kakashi seemed impatient, drawn by the aroma of meat, they ran to the cooking area, eagerly eyeing the steaming pot. Come, each take a piece, taste it first. Might Do was quite fond of Kyomu and Kakashi, picking out 2 pieces of meat from the pot and handing them to the two. Kakashi, busy at the stove, looked up, unable to help but swallow his saliva at the tantalizing aroma. Before he could speak, Kyomu offered him a piece of meat from his own hand, gesturing for Kakashi to have the first bite. But Kyomu then glanced at Rin standing nearby and, when Kakashi took the meat, he let go. You and Rin can share this piece. Immediately, Kyomu looked towards Kakashi, but he had underestimated him. Kakashi, sensing Kyomu's intention, swiftly moved away. And he didn't mind burning his tongue, as by the time Kyomu chased after him, Kakashi had already licked each piece of meat in his hand. Here, you can have half. Kakashi grinned mischievously. You bastard! Kyomu couldn't bear to let it go. He caught Kakashi's collar and shook him, wishing he could tear him apart and use him as firewood. Then don't blame me. Kyomu lifted his face mask, teasingly feeding Kakashi. Ah, it's a pity if you don't eat. It's so delicious. Seeing Kyomu's smug look, Kakashi felt an itch in his teeth, but he didn't let him drool for too long. Might Do came out carrying a large pot, followed by 2 little helpers, stepping briskly out of the room. Dinner's ready. Kyomu and Kakashi couldn't afford to fool around anymore. They ran over and sat down obediently. Kakashi, go wash your face, it's all dirty, Kyomu said. I washed my hands. Kakashi sat down without moving. The dirt on my face doesn't matter, it won't affect me eating meat later. Since when did you start using your brain? Kyomu tilted his head. If it were before, you would have fallen for it. You said it yourself, that was before. Kakashi grinned, don't think I don't know, by the time I go wash my face, you'll have nearly finished all the meat. Kyomu glanced helplessly at Kakashi and shrugged, indicating he had no solution. Then let's rely on our own abilities. Kyomu spoke lightly, with a hint of severity in his eyes, agreed in advance, no standing up to grab, pay attention to table manners. Agreed, Kakashi nodded. With that said, the four of them wielded their chopsticks, ready for the feast that was about to be laid out before them. When the lid of the large pot was lifted, the tantalizing aroma of meat filled the air. Kyomu was the first to reach out, expertly grabbing a piece of meat and stuffing it into his mouth. Kakashi, Obito, Rin, and the others didn't hold back either, joining the fray at the same moment. At this moment, even Might Guy couldn't resist joining in the excitement, forgetting his timidity and happily joining Kyomu and the others in the scramble for food. Dude didn't sit down but watched the five of them fighting over the food with a grin, feeling a sense of accomplishment in his heart. No matter who cooks, they all hope that their dishes will be treated like this. Slurp. As the last drop of soup was swallowed, Kyomu rubbed his round belly, belching in satisfaction. Meanwhile, Kakashi sat on a chair, lost in thought. He wasn't the only one, Obito, Rin, and the others were in the same state. What's wrong with you guys? Guy asked quietly, did you eat too fast and have digestion problems? Guy, do you eat like this every day? Kakashi asked softly. As Kyomu had said, after this meal, not only were Kakashi's taste buds satisfied, but his physical exhaustion and deficits were also swept away. Even if it wasn't as thorough, the value of this meal was no less than that of the secret medicine of the Uchiha clan. Well, not every day, but twice a day. Guy was blissfully ignorant. His answer made Kakashi grind his teeth in frustration. You're really lucky. Obito couldn't help but envy him. Uncle Du's stewed meat isn't just delicious, it's also astonishingly effective. In that case, why wait? Kyomu cleaned his teeth and stood up, stretching his muscles. After digestion, how about another round of training? Of course. I'm full of energy now. Obito looked at Kakashi. What about you, white-haired kid? Casting a sidelong glance at Obito, Kakashi stood up silently, and even Obito became spirited, ready for another session of training. In a world filled with youth, there is no concept of night. Charge. Chapter 36. 10 times fold buff was naturally applied to Kyomu's training, increasing his training speed sharply by 10 times. Today would be another fruitful day. Meanwhile, Guy gradually integrated into this small circle. Although still quite transparent, with Kyomu guiding him, Kakashi, Obito, and Rin quickly accepted Guy. In the following days, Might's small home became lively every day. Kyomu and his group almost became regulars there. It felt uncomfortable if they didn't come for a day. Du naturally continued to warmly welcome them. Roughly calculating the expenses, even though Kyomu and his group indulged themselves there, Du not only didn't lose money but also made a small profit, much higher than his income from doing D-rank missions every day. Feeling somewhat moved, because the money he earned was all handed over to him by Kyomu and others in a subtle and unobtrusive manner, preserving his dignity and improving his family's condition. It had to be said that Kyomu and his group understood the give and take of human relationships. With good food aiding in training, Kyomu's growth speed was needless to say. Kakashi, Obito, and Rin's growth speeds also accelerated accordingly. Especially in terms of physique, Kakashi's progress was particularly evident. If this continued, even with the chakra-consuming Sharingan, he wouldn't lack chakra to the point of exhaustion. After Guy integrated into the small circle of the four, he naturally benefited a lot. No longer working in isolation, with sparring partners, his combat experience skyrocketed. Moreover, after several sparring sessions, Kakashi and Obito were impressed by Guy. In terms of physical skills alone, both of them often found themselves at a disadvantage against Guy. In pure hand-to-hand combat, sometimes even Kyomu himself had to suffer losses at the hands of Guy, not to mention the additional weight Guy wielded. Of course, Kyomu also had additional weight, but without the passive skill reward of resilience he hadn't added any more weight for almost half a month. But Guy was different. His physique growth seemed to have no limit. His strength, speed, reaction, and so on, were truly changing day by day. However, Guy's talent in physical skills was exchanged for his talent in ninjutsu. A simple shadow clone technique became an insurmountable barrier before him. Yes, in mid-October of the third month of enrollment, the ninja teacher, Shuzo, began teaching ninjutsu to the students. And the first ninjutsu, the clone's technique, was taught. Most of the students grasped it relatively quickly. By the end of the month, more than half of the class could barely use it. Using it in actual combat was still somewhat difficult. However, demonstrating it as an exam test was not a problem. Might Guy? Shuzo called his name. With a nervous heart, Guy walked heavily to the podium, slowly forming hand seals. Clone technique! Guy shouted, accompanied by a burst of smoke. Half of the clone technique was completed. Only clothes, without a shadow of a person, the half-finished clone technique completely ignited the atmosphere in the classroom. Ahahaha! This idiot, it's been half a month, and he still hasn't mastered this simple ninjutsu. I really don't understand why someone like Guy, who is such a fool, can hang out with Kyomu and them every day. Laughter overturned the roof, but it was not difficult to judge from the discussions that the surrounding students were jealous of Guy, and their ridicule was even more ruthless. Feeling disheartened, Guy stepped down from the podium with even heavier steps. He truly felt like a failure. Guy! Aragami Kyomu called out to him, everyone has their own weaknesses. You don't need to care about others' opinions. Just focus on doing your best in what you are good at. Making a gesture of encouragement, but don't forget, in terms of physical skills, you are much stronger than me and Kakashi. Guy's eyes lit up, giving Kyomu a thumbs up while nodding firmly, thank you, Kyomu, I will. Regaining confidence, Guy felt that the surrounding mocking voices became less piercing, and the fluctuations in his heart gradually calmed down. But when it was Kakashi's turn, his eyes turned cold, secretly planning to give Guy a boost and at the same time, strike a blow to those classmates who enjoyed mocking others. Just clone technique, such a simple thing, was it worthy to be used as capital for mocking others? Kakashi! Teacher called his name. Kakashi stood up slowly, with no intention of going to the podium, instead forming hand seals in place. Puff puff puff! Bursts of smoke sounded, and Kakashi split into 4 shadow clones. The noisy voices around abruptly stopped, and even Shuzo's speech stuttered. Shadow! Shadow clone technique! Shuzo's mouth was wide open, is this talent? Mastering this level of ninjutsu at the age of 4. Before the words could fall, Kyomu turned his head to his desk partner, his eyes bright. Did Uncle Sakumo return to the village after completing the mission? Yet. Kakashi nodded somewhat complacently, he came back last night. Amazing! Kyomu understood the hidden meaning and praised accordingly, you learned this B-rank forbidden technique in less than a day. Truly worthy of Kakashi. Giving Kakashi's shoulder a push, don't leave after school. I want to learn it. Humph, I knew it. Kakashi rolled his dead fish eyes, you're just thinking about taking advantage of me all the time. You can't say that. Brothers share the benefits, don't they? With a simple exchange, the two quieted down, but the emotions in their hearts were difficult to suppress. Kyomu was happy, his investment finally yielded a small return, and his progress was effectively guaranteed. Kakashi was also excited. He could finally try the shortcut Kyomu had mentioned after class. Soon, all the students in the class completed the exam on the clone technique. Without a doubt, Kakashi, with the more advanced shadow clone technique, surpassed Kyomu and won the first place in the exam. At the moment the results were announced, there were only 2 words in Kakashi's heart, satisfaction. Kyomu didn't feel anything special. Victory and defeat were common in life, and Kakashi's just learned shadow clone technique would soon be his own. When school was over, the classmates scattered like birds and beasts, and Kyomu and his group of 5 also went to the training ground on the edge of the Death Forest together. Du rarely accompanied Guy for training anymore. Instead, he focused on preparing dinner for these children at home, becoming a veritable logistics minister. But there was a reward for effort. Thanks to Du's uninterrupted medicinal meals and the help of Kyomu and others, Guy's growth rate had already exceeded the one from the past timeline. The chakra circulation trajectory of the shadow clone technique looks like this, Kakashi explained the key points of the shadow clone technique. The rest is up to you. Besides practicing more. Is that so? Kyomu formed hand seals and split into 2 shadow clones, it's not that difficult. Kakashi and the others looked at each other, and Obito even howled, Kyomu, do you have to hit people like this? Kakashi just finished explaining and you already learned it. When your chakra control reaches a certain level, and you've improved your mental power, you'll be able to learn and master it in seconds too. It's not that easy. Obito pursed his lips, Ren and I are going to practice water walking. You guys do as you please. Obito and Rin walked away together, while Kyomu and Kakashi glanced at each other, preparing to figure out how to cheat using the shadow clone technique for training. Meanwhile, Guy continued his unchanging regimen of toughening his body and practicing hand-to-hand combat, without any specific areas for Kyomu to worry about. Let's do it here. Kyomu and Kakashi came to a stand not far away. Let's try splitting one shadow clone first to see the effect, and the duration should not be too long. I understand this. Kakashi nodded, but with Uncle Do's medicinal meals backing us up, we can be a bit bolder. It's better to be cautious for the first time practicing the shadow clone technique. Kyomu shook his head, the body is our capital. We absolutely cannot afford any problems. Kakashi agreed, but still turned to Kyomu and said something off topic. Kyomu, there's about a month left until New Year's. Do you have any plans for next year? Do you have any ideas? Yeah, I want to graduate early. Kakashi invited Kyomu, how about we do it together? The knowledge taught by the ninja school professors is of little value to us. Kyomu rubbed his chin, early graduation is easy, but it's a bit difficult when it comes to the supervising teacher. My father will be our supervising teacher. Kakashi dropped a bombshell, I've already talked to my father about this. He didn't object, and he also wants to meet you. Is that so? Kyomu nodded, then grinned, then tonight, after dinner at Uncle Do's house, I'll come to visit. Great, it's settled then. After a bit of off-topic conversation, the two began to focus on their training. While practicing, Kyomu's emotions never calmed down. At some point in the future, the investment he had made in Kakashi and the others would surely bring a highly concentrated and high-quality return. His life was finally about to take off. Chapter 37. Plus 800 Milestone Power Stones Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. Uncle Sakumo, as it's my first visit, please accept this. Kyomu bowed respectfully and presented a small gift. But I remember, Kyomu, you have visited before, haven't you? Sakumo looked Kyomu up and down. I heard from Kakashi that you were the one who stewed the old hen at home. Kyomu suddenly felt a bit embarrassed and discreetly glanced at Kakashi, but the latter just turned his head away, ignoring him. Well, there was such a thing. Kyomu scratched his head. But uncle wasn't home at that time, it's a pity. I'm quite skilled at stewing chicken. If you'd like, I can buy one from the market and stew a pot for you. You're not afraid at all, and quite slippery, Sakumo chuckled even more. Alright, enough joking, come in. Making way for Kyomu and Kakashi to enter the house, Sakumo led Kyomu to sit on the sofa while Kakashi turned to the kitchen to prepare some fruit snacks for hospitality. Though they were very familiar with each other, basic etiquette when guests come was still necessary. Sitting on the sofa with Sakumo, Kyomu was bold, constantly sizing him up. Sakumo was the same, curious about what kind of person could become such good friends with Kakashi in just 3 months. Kyomu, you're not afraid of me at all. Uncle is very kind, why should I be afraid? Kyomu seemed very natural. Do you know me? Not really. Kyomu shook his head. But I know Kakashi. Sakumo was momentarily stunned, then burst into laughter. I see now why Kakashi became friends with you so quickly. Uncle overpraises me. It's me who became friends with Kakashi. Kyomu corrected, mainly because I kept pestering him, and Kakashi gradually agreed to be friends with me. You're quite straightforward. Sakumo seemed to see through Kyomu's thoughts deep down. But that's not a problem, and I don't see anything wrong with it. Having experienced many ups and downs in life, with both strength and talent, as well as a keen eye for judging people, Sakumo had a clear understanding of Kyomu's implicit intentions and his initial intentions for approaching Kakashi. But on the other hand, many people had similar intentions as Aragami Kyomu, but few could be as candid without arousing aversion. However, Kyomu, I still want to ask you, why do you do this? There are many reasons, but the most crucial is that I want to have strength, to have the power to control my own destiny and break free from predetermined fate. Breaking fate. Sakumo pondered for a moment. I see, I hope one day you can fulfill your dream. Thank you for understanding, uncle. Waving his hand, Sakumo shook his head with a smile. No need to thank me, I accept your apology. It's okay, I accept uncle's apology. Haha. Sakumo couldn't help but laugh again. Kyomu, oh Kyomu, if I were Kakashi, I would definitely choose you as a friend, even entrust each other as close friends. After getting a simple understanding of Kyomu's character, Sakumo completely let go, giving Kyomu a high score for emotional intelligence. Knowing what to say to whom, when to say it, whether to joke or not, and what kind of jokes to make, Kyomu's precision was impeccable. Although there were suspicions of slickness, Kyomu's sincere qualities perfectly eliminated any concerns in this regard. In short, being friends with Kyomu, as long as both parties were sincere, there would be no dirty tricks between them, which was very reassuring. Moreover, Kyomu never waited for others to open up first, he always took the initiative to show his sincerity, which was another bonus point. However, Kyomu dared to do this because he had a reliance that outsiders didn't know about. Sakumo, Kakashi, Obito, Guy, Rin, and others' character traits were well known to Kyomu, otherwise, he wouldn't dare to play like this. Kakashi, who was hiding in the kitchen, listened to the conversation between Aragami Kyomu and his father, and his heart finally relaxed. Kyomu had passed the most critical test of his father's character. Hey, freshly washed apples. Kakashi walked to the sofa with a fruit platter. Kyomu casually took 3 and generously handed one to Sakumo and Kakashi each. You kid, do you really treat this place like your own home? Why not? Kyomu took a bite of the apple, looking very relaxed. When I first saw uncle, I knew you would spoil me, so naturally, I would feel at ease. He's good at sizing people up. Kakashi chimed in and squeezed onto the sofa next to Kyomu. And he's thick-skinned, sharp-tongued, and always gets away with things. Why would you be friends with him then? Sakumo asked with a smile. Just one advantage, speaking the truth, doing real things, speaking from the heart. Kakashi looked towards Sakumo, speaking much more than usual. But this bastard Kyomu speaks the truth selectively, with lots of hidden thoughts. You can't say that. Kyomu took another bite of the apple. If I said you look girly, that would be the truth, but would you be happy? Kyomu. Kakashi's forehead vein throbbed. Just for this, I really want to chop you up with a knife. It's just because you can't argue with me. If it were Obito, you would instantly bully him. Listening to the banter between the two, Sakumo laughed heartily, feeling relieved that his son had found a good friend. All right, you two, calm down for a moment. Sakumo interrupted, then turned to Kyomu. Kyomu, how did you consider the early graduation? I didn't plan to graduate early, but when Kakashi told me that you would be our team leader after graduation, I wished I could graduate from the ninja school right away. You're interested in my father's strength, aren't you? Kakashi glanced sideways. I knew you had a lot of thoughts. Strength is one aspect, but character is most important. Kyomu didn't deny it. And considering my background, early graduation would only bring disadvantages to me. If my team leader after early graduation wasn't you, uncle, I would endure until the normal graduation. Sakumo fell silent, and Kakashi also lowered his head in thought. It's a mature consideration. Sakumo nodded. But it seems like you're implying something. Not really, it's just an immature thought in my mind. Kyomu shook his head. Or you could say it's just a hunch. But you're so casually revealing your secrets to me, aren't you worried? Not worried. Kyomu tossed the apple core into the trash. From now on, I'll call you teacher, uncle. There's nothing to hide. See, father, this guy only has this one advantage. Kakashi intervened. He always reveals his cards first, leaving you with no anger or reluctance to deal with him. Haha, but I believe it's what you said about Kyomu being observant and having other intentions. Kyomu wouldn't do this. Sakumo smiled in response. Alright, let's end the joke here. Kyomu immediately sat up straight, no longer as relaxed as before. The first turning point in his destiny was about to come. Kyomu. Yes, uncle. I have high hopes for you, but I can also sense that you have a kind of danger in your heart that I can't see or touch. Sakumo paused, and his next words would determine Kyomu's fate. But I've decided to take you as my disciple. Relieved, Kyomu stood up and bowed in thanks. Thank you for understanding, teacher. You changed your tune quickly. Kakashi turned his dead fish eyes away, but the corners of his mouth hidden behind the mask curved into a subtle arc. It's done. Actually, not just Kakashi, Kyomu felt the same way. His teacher was none other than Konoha's White Fang, Hatake Sakumo. Chapter 38. Plus 1000 Power Stones Milestone Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. Teacher, goodbye. Kyomu also waved goodbye to Kakashi and walked back home under the moonlight. It's the end of the month again. Kyomu looked up at the crescent moon when he returned home. I wonder what this randomly refreshed passive skill will be this time. Without sleepiness, Kyomu quietly waited in the courtyard, full of anticipation and anxiety for the unknown. After midnight, the passive skill Gourmet Critique disappeared, replaced by a new passive skill. Passive skill, Mastery in Cold Weapons. Skill description, during skill enhancement, all cold weapon damage plus 200%, cold weapon related talents plus 200%, no bottleneck in cold weapon related advancements. Note, this passive skill only takes effect when using cold weapons. Skill duration, 30 days. Message, how can a man resist cold weapons? When using them, you must be handsome, fast, ruthless, and unbeatable. Kyomu looked at his newly refreshed passive skill, feeling half joyful and half worried. The joy was that he could use this passive skill to maximize his proficiency in swordsmanship, throwing techniques, and other cold weapon-related combat abilities to a significantly high level this month. But the downside was that this passive skill's coverage was too narrow. Kyomu's progress in other aspects of combat would be forced to slow down this month. Well, what can I do? Passive skills refresh randomly. Kyomu drew out his ninja blade and gestured, anyway there are still areas worth developing in cold weapons, such as the 1000 sword cuts. With a grin, Kyomu already had a specific training plan for this month in his mind. He looked up at the crescent moon. Kyomu's drowsiness wasn't too heavy, he wanted to take advantage of the freshness of the newly acquired passive skill to focus on his swordsmanship proficiency. Training in cold weapons without bottlenecks, it's like the principle of diligence leading to success. Kyomu gripped the sword handle and said, let's start with 1000 sword draws and see if we can master the draw sword slash. Standing in the yard, Kyomu held his breath and focused. Swish! Quickly draw the sword, attack, and sheath it, all in less than a second. Feels okay, let's do it again. Kyomu couldn't help but nod. If I can be a bit faster and stronger, can I develop techniques similar to Day Tiger or Morning Peacock? T/N, Shishi Sunsen. After practicing until his arms were sore and unbearable, Kyomu finally stopped. He washed up and went to bed, and when he woke up the next day, all fatigue from Kyomu's body was gone. The first morning of the 4th month of enrollment would be a new beginning. Arriving at the ninja school, greeting familiar classmates, Kyomu looked around to find Kakashi and Obito's whereabouts. Kakashi probably skipped class again. It was only at the end of the month that he might be seen in the classroom. As for Obito, this guy was late again, probably because he encountered an old lady or stray animals, so being late was inevitable. Sure enough, Obito was late again, and his excuses for being late were always the same. The teacher no longer trusted him. For a whole month, Obito had never been on time, and his reasons were either about animals or helping old ladies. Everyone's ears were almost calloused from hearing them. Was it because old ladies always popped up just when you were about to be late for school? Absurd. But Shozo no longer got angry with Obito, he simply pointed to the door, go, stand outside and come in when it's the second class. The classroom erupted in laughter, and faintly, you could hear someone shouting Uchiha's shame, Obito's nickname. Obito was still next to the bottom of the class, and no one could shake Might Guy's position. At the end of the day's lessons, nothing particularly noteworthy happened, as usual. However, when school was over, Kyomu approached Shozo alone. Teacher, I plan to apply for early graduation after the new year and wait until the next semester to graduate. Opening his mouth, Shozo finally didn't say anything to dissuade him. Geniuses like you and Kakashi, continuing to stay in the ninja school is meaningless. Naturally, teacher supports it. But if you two graduate early, it will create a history for the ninja school since its founding. This is a good thing, but not entirely. I believe with your intelligence, you will understand the pros and cons. Clearly, Shozo knew some dirty secrets within Konoha village, and he was subtly warning Kyomu. After all, Kyomu was alone and had no family ties, making him too easy to control with such talent. I actually wanted to keep a low profile. Kyomu smiled bitterly and shook his head, but Kakashi found me and said he would make Mr. Sakumo our team leader. I see. Shozo finally relaxed, smiling at the corner of his mouth. With Mr. Sakumo supporting you too, it saves unnecessary trouble. Your future is promising. But I still want to thank teacher Shizo for taking care of me during this time. Kyomu bowed deeply. Without the extra knowledge you gave me, I would not have achieved what I have now. Shizo was very pleased. Kyomu's gratitude meant that he remembered the kindness he had shown him. Patting Kyomu's shoulder, "Good boy, if you encounter any difficulties in the future, just tell the teacher. Although I may not be able to help much, I will do my best. There is something I want to ask the teacher for help." Kyomu smiled awkwardly. "Are you planning to skip class too?" Shizo understood instantly but didn't say much. He just waved casually, go ahead. There's nothing more I can teach you here anyway. But one thing must be made clear, you must come by the end of the month. If the exam content is unsatisfactory, teacher won't let you off." "Don't worry, teacher, I won't fail." Kyomu bowed again and stood up straight, waving his hand as he ran out of the office, meeting up with Obito, Rin, and Guy waiting outside. "Will we not see you during the day anymore?" Obito looked gloomy. "Teacher Shizo is really something, how can he easily agree to let you skip class?" "Obito." Rin poked Obito, "Considering Kyomu and Kakashi's talents, it's better to spend time on self-training to progress faster." "I know that, but it just feels like I'm a bit too much of a slacker compared to Kyomu and Kakashi." Seeing Obito looking gloomy, Kyomu hurriedly stepped forward and patted his shoulder. "After school, we can train together. And when you wake up, I and Kakashi will be ahead of you, but you still can definitely catch up in one go." "I think so too." Obito smiled again, taking the initiative to hook arms with Kyomu. "Kyomu, let me tell you, I learned a new B-rank fire release ninjutsu today. Do you want to learn?" "Of course." Kyomu wouldn't refuse. "But I already know all B-rank fire release ninjutsu." "B-rank, it's B-rank." Obito muttered softly, "Have you heard of fire release, fire dragon flame bullet?" "Of course, I've heard of it. Its power can be considered top-notch. And Obito can actually master this B-rank fire release ninjutsu alone." Obito's expression stiffened, and he shook his head slowly. "I haven't learned yet. I only know the hand seals and chakra flow trajectory of this fire release ninjutsu. There's still a long way to go before I can use it. It requires diligent practice." Kyomu was not surprised at all. Given Obito's age and current talent, if he could master a B-rank fire release ninjutsu, it would truly be a miracle. And Kyomu was equally uneasy. He felt it would be difficult for him to master this top-notch B-rank fire release ninjutsu in a short time. After all, the enhancement range of this month's passive skill was very narrow, forcing Kyomu's efforts to be focused only on cold weapons. But it wasn't a big problem. First, figure out the hand seals and chakra flow trajectory of fire release, fire dragon flame bullet, and then slowly practice the rest. Half an hour later, Kakashi and Kyomu's group assembled, announcing the start of today's lively training. As usual, they shared their training experiences with each other first, then shared any new knowledge they had mastered. After everyone had taken note, they would pair up or train alone depending on their progress. Obito and Rin continued to train together, Guy trained his body alone, and Kyomu and Kakashi remained together, either sparring or working on their individual training subjects. "Is it effective to mechanically swing your sword like that?" Kakashi couldn't help but ask. "Of course it is." Kyomu improvised, "Simpleness, forge greatness. Even if you have no talent, after 10,000 swings of the sword, you will find that your speed, accuracy, and strength have all improved significantly compared to before." "Nonsense." Kakashi sneered, "I swing my sword more than 10,000 times every day, but my progress isn't as exaggerated as you say. If you've tried it and made little progress, then, who let you try it?" Kyomu spread his hands, looking very teasing, "Without a passive skill like mine, of course you can't. Isn't that obvious?" "What is a passive skill?" "Passive means that I have a unique understanding of cold weapons. What I can do, you may not be able to do." "Humph, boring." Kakashi turned away, "I want to see what kind of effect you'll get after mechanically repeating a sword swing 10,000 times. Don't cry when the time comes." Kyomu continued to swing his sword. "Do you know a move called heaven-cutting sword technique?" "Stop bluffing, okay." Kakashi obviously didn't believe it. "Isn't it just a sword draw? There's nothing special about it." "Is that so?" Without the enhancement of a passive skill, it was indeed ordinary, but with the passive skill, it was a different story. Kyomu glanced at Kakashi and had already decided that after he mastered it, he would ruthlessly strike him. Chapter 39. After the 10,000 sword exercises, Kyomu finally completed them just before the sun completely disappeared below the horizon. Putting away his sword, Kyomu also breathed out a sigh of relief. Finished practicing. Kakashi glanced sideways at Kyomu. Do you want to test your practice results with me? Want to spar? Not really, I just want to see the effects of your 10,000 sword exercises you mentioned earlier, to see if it's as exaggerated as you claimed. Seeing Kakashi take the initiative to be his training dummy, Kyomu naturally wouldn't refuse. My strike might be too much for you to handle. Kakashi sneered, do you think I don't know your swordsmanship level? Stop boasting. Indeed, Kakashi's swordsmanship level had always been superior to Kyomu's, there was no denying that. But now, it's hard to say who is stronger. Although it was just practicing 10,000 sword exercises, the strength of the passive skill mastery of cold weapons lies in the absence of bottlenecks in practicing cold weapons. No bottleneck means unlimited progress, which means that with each sword swing, Kyomu's sword power would increase. Compared to diligence, it lacked a bit of comprehensiveness, but in terms of practice effectiveness, it gained a bit of professionalism. I'm not boasting. Kyomu shook his head seriously. Step aside, let me cut a tree to show you the effect. Afterwards, you can decide whether or not to confront me head-on. What you said makes sense, then show me. Kakashi obviously didn't believe it, feeling underestimated by Kyomu. I want to see the results. Don't fail to surprise me and end up making me laugh instead. I'll definitely leave you speechless. With a ninja knife in his left hand, Kyomu slowly approached a tree the thickness of two people. Watch carefully, I'll only perform once. As his words fell, Kyomu took a step back with his left foot and slowly placed his right hand on the handle of the knife. Inhaling, and at the moment of exhaling, Kyomu's right hand moved. Time slowed down at this moment, the leaves that had just fallen from the tree seemed to be affected, freezing in midair without continuing to fall. Meanwhile, Kakashi widened his eyes, watching the scene before him as if the door to a new world had slammed into his head, leaving him bewildered. As the blade extended by half an inch, the air around it began to tremble, forming a vortex in an instant, gathering 2 centimeters in front of Kyomu's right hand. As the blade extended another half inch, the vibrating air in front of the wrist formed a ripple, mutually vibrating while being compressed, with the moisture contained within condensing into a cloud-like appearance. As the ninja knife was halfway unsheathed, a piercing sound came, the surrounding air turned into waves of wind, constantly gathering under the blade, the white cloud-like air wall in front becoming heavier. The steel blade suddenly turned red as it was about to be fully unsheathed, as if it had been scorched in a furnace, glowing red-hot and dazzling. This. Kakashi had just uttered a word when time seemed to suddenly return to normal around him. It wasn't time stagnation, but rather Kyomu's actions were performed at an extreme speed. How? Swish! The air wall in front, condensed by the white cloud-like appearance, was cut by the blade, cutting off the last 2 syllables Kakashi uttered, condensing into a crescent-shaped sword aura with a red leading edge, whistling through the air. Without any chakra fluctuations, all that existed was the unique shockwave formed by the extreme compression of the surrounding air. And because of the speed being too fast, the friction-generated fireworks began to burn, spreading from the tip to the end. Boom! Like a crimson crescent moon, the sword aura soared into the sky, carrying the speed and distance of breaking the sound barrier, swiftly passing through the tree in front without any obstruction, continuing its forward impact. At the same time, wherever the crimson sword aura passed, smoke billowed and debris flew on the ground. With the tremendous speed of the sword aura, wherever it passed through nothing will growth again. From the second tree, to the third, to the fourth. It wasn't until the 7th tree that its power began to diminish, only cutting halfway through before completely losing its momentum. Amazing! Ding! Kyomu sheathed his sword, pressing down the last 2 syllables Kakashi uttered, and looked at the magnificent scene before him, unable to help but nod. This was, so far, the strongest attack he could make. Boom boom boom! At this moment, amidst the billowing smoke in front of Kyomu, 6 large trees toppled one after another, immediately drawing the attention of Obito, Rin, and Guy. Without hesitation, they rushed over, only to see Kyomu standing with his sword sheathed, facing Kakashi with their eyes locked. This figure, inexplicably, seemed quite handsome. Kakashi, convinced now. How is this possible? Kakashi didn't answer Kyomu's question, just stood dumbfounded in place, murmuring the same phrase repeatedly. Practicing mechanical sword exercises 10,000 times can achieve such an effect? Then, his past self had wasted all his time on nonsense. In fact, Kakashi's thoughts were a bit exaggerated. Although Kyomu had made some progress in his training, the ability to unleash such a powerful sword aura relied on the passive skill mastery of cold weapons. A 200% increase in cold weapon power is no joke. But Kakashi didn't know this, he just felt that this was Kyomu's true strength. Don't stand there dumbfounded, come over and help me. Aragami Kyomu stood straight, but his voice trembled. Why are you injured? I've strained my muscles and my chakra is severely depleted. It's not a big deal, just need to rest for a while. Really? Kakashi felt a little relieved, it wasn't a big problem indeed. Why are you pushing yourself so hard? No other reason, just wanted to see what your expression would be like when you doubted life. Kyomu smiled back. You rascal, even at this time, you still want to tease me. Kakashi pouted and couldn't help but shove Kyomu. Ouch! Kyomu immediately cried out in pain. Kakashi, you've killed me, don't you know that I'm in pain when I move now? Is that mess ahead, created by Kyomu? Obito stepped forward stutteringly and asked. Of course it was me, did you think it was Kakashi? Oh, that's all right then. It's a relief it wasn't Kakashi. Kakashi's temple twitched. Obito, what do you mean by that? No particular meaning, just feel more reassured if it's Kyomu who did it, but if it were you, I definitely wouldn't sleep tonight. Obito was skilled at talking back, and Kakashi felt genuinely offended. Obito, I'll tear your mouth apart. Kakashi couldn't hold back anymore. Where am I worse than Kyomu? Well, don't argue for now. Might Guy stepped forward. Kyomu, can you explain how you did that? The wreckage over there reminds me more and more of what my father told me about the 8 gates. Might Guy's judgment was correct, Kyomu's previous strike did indeed bear a striking resemblance to the 8 gates. Kakashi and Obito stopped their bickering and both pricked up their ears, waiting for Kyomu's explanation. Whether it's with cold weapons or martial arts, as long as the speed is fast enough and the strength is sufficient, even a simple sword draw or a straightforward punch can transcend the ordinary and become a powerful technique capable of moving mountains and shattering rocks. Easier said than done. Kakashi shook his head in frustration. How fast does the sword have to be swung to achieve what you just did? It's a talent you can only envy. Kyomu boasted a bit, then became serious again. But haven't you forgotten about Chakra, the force of nature? Kyomu, are you saying? Kakashi grasped a glimmer of insight, but couldn't describe it precisely. Chakra can enhance physical strength and speed, especially the activation effect of lightning release chakra, which is particularly significant. Kyomu looked at Kakashi. This is something your family's Hitaki sword style has applied in this regard. There's another possibility. Might Guy suddenly interjected, his face full of excitement that couldn't be concealed. The 8 gates, there's also the possibility for the 8 gates. What's that? Obito finally chimed in. Is it a ninjutsu, taijutsu, or something else? It's taijutsu. Might Guy looked at the chaotic scene in the forest ahead, his eyes filled with flickering flames. It's a forbidden technique of taijutsu that can make a person burst out with 10 or even 100 times their own speed, strength, and explosiveness. Waving his fist, Might Guy looked at the shadow of his fist he had just thrown, his eyes full of anticipation. When speed, strength, and explosiveness are enough, my fist can also achieve the effect of Kyomu's strike. You can do it. Both Kakashi and Obito's eyes gleamed with excitement. No, I can't. Guy, you'll end up with no friends like this. Obito shrugged, you shouldn't say it out loud, it just makes us feel bad. But my father can. Ah. Suddenly, hope shone in both Kakashi and Obito's eyes. They couldn't acquire the unique talent that Kyomu possessed, but there was another way out, and they must seize it. Let's go, to Uncle Do's house. Kakashi and Obito made a decision on the spot, grabbing Might Guy and running forward. Hey, what about me? Kyomu, left behind, shouted loudly from behind, wait for me, I can't keep up, I can't move. Chapter 40. Power Stone's achievements got reset. Plus 200 equals 1 chapter. The 8 inner gates. Inside the small cabin in the woods, Might Do sat cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by Kyomu and others, who were listening attentively. According to my speculation, there are pathways in everyone's body that restrict chakra. This is beneficial for individuals. Because chakra is a volatile power, otherwise, it wouldn't give rise to many powerful ninjutsu techniques. But it also has its drawbacks. The only drawback, which is also shared with the benefits, is that the chakra bound by these pathways becomes docile within the body, losing its original violent power. As we all know, chakra has the ability to activate body cells, allowing us to gain stronger strength, faster speed, and more powerful bursts during the activation of body cells. However, when chakra is bound by these pathways, it becomes docile and loses its original power, preventing us from maximizing its use during the activation of body cells. And the 8 inner gates technique that I developed is a way to open these pathways that bind chakra, allowing the chakra's original power to be fully transferred to oneself, thereby achieving the goal of completely unlocking the body's potential. Having said this, Might-do paused, his eyes shining with an inexplicable light. Who would have thought that a low-ranking ninja who had wasted more than 20 years would one day become a mentor? And the students listening to his lecture were representatives of the new generation of Konoha. Excitement, the taste of hard-won success, and other emotions surged in their hearts. There was a hint of moisture in the corner of their eyes. Finally, his perseverance was recognized by others. This is the entirety of his youth. Even if it is learned by someone other than his son, it's still worth it. After all, everyone must realize their own value in life, and passing on his youthful ideals is the only way for Might-do to realize his own value in life. After all, over the past 20 years, he had received too much ridicule and disdain, but now, his perseverance had finally paid off, making him eagerly sought after by others. Wiping the corner of his eyes, Might-do blinked and smiled, "This is the crystallization of my youth. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them." "I dare not." Ren, unusually, was the first to speak. "Uncle Do, I cannot give a definition to the 8 inner gates technique based on my limited knowledge of ninjutsu, but I still have some concerns." After careful consideration of her words, Ren slowly expressed her concerns. "Uncle Do, have you ever considered how the human body, as well as the chakra channels that run chakra, could withstand the release of its original volatile properties after releasing the pathways that bind chakra?" "I have considered this." Might-do grinned, revealing a set of white teeth. "The human body is fragile but also has limitless potential. We can make our bodies stronger through relentless training day and night. So, I have developed herbal medicine, urging myself to train my body day after day, just waiting for the day when it will blossom in the future." "Uncle Do, how long do you expect to practice before reaching the level you envision?" Kakashi asked next. "I'm not sure." Might-do shook his head. "My talent is average, and for now, I can only open 6 gates. Turning to look at Guy, he continued, "But my son, Guy, is more talented than me. He will definitely inherit my youth and perfectly unleash it." Talking to Might-do was like this. You could say he was eccentric, or that his words were unclear, but he was just such a person. You need patience. Kyomu also knew that it was time for him to step in. If Might-do continued to express himself ambiguously with the word youth, probably no one in the room except himself and Guy would be able to grasp it. "Uncle Do, what kind of power can you unleash after opening the 6th gate?" Kyomu got straight to the point. "With my strength, after opening the 6th gate, I can fight against special jounin." In other words, the power that can be unleashed after the 8 inner gates technique is activated depends on the original strength of the user. Does it decrease? Kyomu asked a crucial question. No. Might-do answered firmly, if you are a chunin, after opening the 6th gate of the 8 inner gates technique, under the premise of not considering other factors and only using taijutsu to fight, you can contend with a jounin. Kyomu glanced at Kakashi, and Kakashi looked at Obito and Rin, and the 4 of them nodded in unison. The 8 inner gates technique is like a power booster, and it increases the strength by a very fixed multiple. If you don't consider the side effects and the difficulty of practicing this technique, the 8 inner gates technique is indeed a very rare ace in the hole. But there are also those who are sober-minded, like Obito. "I'm sorry, Uncle Do, the 8 inner gates technique is very powerful, but it's not suitable for me." Obito shook his head regretfully, "I can't spend most of my day practicing to push my body to its limits." Obito was not wrong. With his Uchiha bloodline, taijutsu was only supplementary, and this was also true in the later stages of ninjutsu. Only the Sharingan and Dojutsu were their essence. Although the effects of the 8 inner gates technique were very tempting, the input and output were simply not proportional in the short to medium term, which did not fit Obito's future growth path. Kyomu didn't try to persuade him, but instead turned his gaze to Kakashi. I can try to learn, but I can't specialize in it. Kakashi also shook his head. In my family's Hitaki sword technique, there are techniques that use lightning release to activate body cells. Although its upper limit may not be as high as the 8 inner gates technique, the growth curve is smoother. Kakashi's considerations were also rational and clear. He could use the 8 inner gates technique as a supplementary practice, but it wasn't his entire focus. As for Rin, Kyomu automatically ignored her. She never put much effort into combat. Her goal from beginning to end was to become a medical ninja who saved lives. Combat was just her side job. So after all the twists and turns, learning the 8 inner gates technique became his own goal. Everyone knows my talent. Since you all won't learn it, or only as a secondary focus, then I'll take the lead. Kyomu smiled and, as he stood up, his expression became serious. Uncle Do, I'll rely on you for the next period of time. Standing up straight, he turned to the side to face Might Guy, and Guy, I'm going to be your direct competitor now. Kyomu, are you really? Of course. That's great. Might Guy stood up all of a sudden. I've always hoped to have a companion on my journey of youth, and now, it's came true. Kakashi and Obito watched Might Guy, who was overflowing with excitement, shaking their heads while smiling. Kyomu, aren't you afraid of biting off more than you can chew? Kakashi interjected, are you giving up on your swordsmanship? Remember, practice drawing your sword 10,000 times a day. Then you may never learn my heavenly swordsmanship in your lifetime. Kakashi arrogantly shook his head, my Hitaki swordsmanship is not bad. Advanced techniques can achieve similar effects. Using lightning release chakra and white fang. Something like that. Kakashi nodded, ninjutsu is still the main aspect for a ninja, and my Hitaki swordsmanship is also considered a lightning release ninjutsu, just with swordsmanship as its carrier. Ninjutsu swordsmanship. Obito teased, nudging Kakashi with his shoulder, or is it a perverse jutsu? Get out of here. Ha ha ha. Laughter filled the air, marking a small pause in the initial journey of learning the 8 inner gates technique. Politely bidding farewell to Might Guy, Kakashi, Obito, and Rin left, leaving Kyomu standing there alone. Uncle Do, let's start our lesson. Kyomu smiled, tilting his head, I can't wait any longer. Alright, let me first tell you the method of opening the first gate of the 8 inner gates technique. Might Do once again entered teaching mode, patting his son's shoulder to indicate that he should listen attentively. In this time period, the 8 inner gates technique, which should have been mastered only by Might Guy, now had Kyomu as well, and Might Guy's learning of the 8 inner gates technique was advanced by 3 years because of Kyomu. However, all of this was within Kyomu's expectations. His foundation was slowly becoming solid. Chapter 41. Remember plus 200 power stones equals 1 extra chapter. Kyomu also skipped class today with Kakashi. Finally, Kakashi had some company, but Obito, Rin, and Guy felt empty inside. It wasn't just about emotions but also worries about the future. The gap in strength between Kyomu and Kakashi was indeed growing larger. But regardless, Kyomu wouldn't deliberately slow down to wait for others. He had to race against time. Not to prove how much of a genius he was, but to gain enough power to protect himself in the Third Great Ninja War. Survival was Kyomu's ultimate goal, while achieving something better and more exciting was secondary. These goals weren't contradictory. Huff, huff, huff. Kyomu breathed heavily, gripping the handle of his sword firmly in his right hand as he practiced lifting it up and down to increase his arm strength. Clang, clang, clang. The weights hanging from the blade collided with each other as Kyomu moved, creating a clear and annoying sound, prompting Kakashi to glance over frequently. This guy is a monster. And today, Kakashi discovered that Kyomu had been carrying weights all along. When Kyomu took them off, Kakashi looked at the large pit left on the ground, genuinely shocked. Hey, what have you been eating? Kakashi couldn't help but shout at Kyomu. Simple meals and Uncle Do's medicinal food. Just like me. Kakashi couldn't help but look at his own arms and legs. It's really, sigh. Sighing, Kakashi stopped paying attention to Kyomu. They walked different paths, and Kakashi couldn't let Kyomu disrupt his mindset. Out of sight, out of mind, Kakashi walked away, distancing himself from Kyomu even further, emphasizing the saying birds of a feather flock together. Gathering his focus, Kakashi turned his attention to honing his Kenjutsu, while one of his shadow clones, created for the purpose of refining his chakra control. It's worth mentioning that Kakashi had mastered this cheat method of double training, timing it perfectly to avoid harming himself. Naturally, Kyomu did the same, with the added bonus of having one more shadow clone than Kakashi. The division of labor was clear. Kyomu focused on honing his own skills, while one shadow clone refined chakra control, and the other practiced the sky-severing sword technique mechanically. As for the 8 gates formation, which Kyomu had just understood the principle of yesterday, he didn't rush to train it. After all, to train in the 8 gates formation, one's physical condition had to meet certain standards. Unfortunately, while Kyomu's physical condition was strong now, he still fell short of the standards for training in the 8 gates formation. So necessary sacrifices had to be made, and Kyomu was clear about that. With the passive skill mastery of cold weapons, he naturally focused most of his attention on swordsmanship training. After all, such a useful passive skill only lasted for a month. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The lifting exercises continued, and Kyomu could clearly feel the strength, endurance, and explosive power of his right arm and back muscles steadily increasing. A faint sense of achievement lingered in his heart, which was partly why Kyomu was willing to put in the effort to train. Who could refuse the wonderful experience of constantly surpassing oneself? After 10,000 lifts, Kyomu put down his ninja sword, shook his sore arms, rested for a moment, and then began training his left arm's strength. The weights hanging from the blade still maintained a weight of 200 kilograms. But it wouldn't hurt to increase it after today's training. The sun moved from the east corner to the center of the sky, and Kyomu finally completed the strength training of his core muscle groups such as arms, back, and abdomen. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Kyomu didn't wait for Kakashi but saw Might Guy running over. "Kyomu, Kakashi!" Guy waved. Youth should not be wasted, but rest and eating are essential to maintaining youth. Full of the flavor of youth in his speech, Kyomu and Kakashi thanked Guy in unison. "Haha, no problem. I'm happy to do this myself, as long as you guys don't find me annoying." Laughing awkwardly, Guy placed the food box on the ground. "You guys eat first, I have other things to do and must leave in a hurry. Oh, by the way, there's no need to wash the food box and utensils. Just bring them to my place when you come over tonight." Waving goodbye, Guy hurried over and then hurriedly left. Kyomu and Kakashi sat cross-legged around the food box on the ground, swiftly opening it and taking out the medicinal food inside. "Wow, it smells great." Kyomu took his portion. Uncle Do's cooking has improved a lot, and some of the herbs inside have stronger effects. "That's right." Kakashi stuffed a piece of meat into his mouth, speaking indistinctly. "I just wonder how much money Uncle Do spent again. We'll have to find a way to repay him." "Of course, but let's try to avoid being too deliberate about it. Uncle Do is very sensitive." Kakashi nodded, unable to resist pinching Kyomu's arm. "It feels like you've gained another layer. Even though we eat the same things, why? You should just stick to Master's, Sakumo's, path honestly and not think too much about it." Kyomu advised Kakashi, "Everyone has different strengths. Your current priority is to improve your swordsmanship, chakra control, and mental strength." Kakashi shook his head helplessly. "I know that, but when I'm with you, I can't help but doubt myself. I'm a genius, I know that. Don't repeat it every day, okay? Who isn't a genius?" Kakashi's face turned red. "My talent isn't worse than yours." "Then prove it." Kyomu swallowed the last piece of meat. "You know what direction you should be working towards. So, it's okay if you're different from me in some aspects, but if you can't keep up with me in the same areas." "Impossible." Kakashi put down his chopsticks. "I'm going to train now. You clean up here." Watching Kakashi's gradually disappearing figure, Kyomu couldn't help but shake his head. Kakashi's path was wide but narrow at the same time, with only a few directions to choose from. Kyomu wasn't sure which path Kakashi should take. "All right, it's still early. No rush." Kyomu stood up, patting his buttocks. "Anyway, laying a solid foundation is more important than anything else, whether it's me or Kakashi, being down to earth is the most correct way." Stretching lazily, Kyomu entered a state of training. This time, he practiced the speed of drawing the sword. Kenjutsu and Batojutsu were essentially the same in the Naruto world, just with different names. The techniques of Kenjutsu and Batojutsu were composed of 9 basic moves: direct cut, diagonal cut from right to left, reverse diagonal cut from left to right, left horizontal cut, right horizontal cut, left cut upwards, right cut upwards, upward cut, and thrust. Some derived techniques might be very exquisite, but they all stemmed from the basics. Moreover, many techniques were not superior to others. The only factors determining superiority were one's strength, speed, and reaction time. With this analysis in mind, Kyomu's next training became simpler. As long as he mastered the basic moves and imbued them with the fastest speed, strongest power, and highest explosiveness when using them, then the basic moves would be his ultimate jutsu. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Kyomu practiced the 9 basic moves with a very clear goal in mind, striving to give each move the highest speed, power, and explosiveness possible, aiming to do his best each time. It was evident that what Kyomu was pursuing now was to strike without fail and make every strike deadly. It seemed somewhat unconventional, but with 9 basic moves, Kyomu had 9 chances, which didn't amount to putting everything on the same basket. And haven't you heard, speed is power? The core of it all was what Aragami Kyomu was practicing now, very basic, but the firm foundation for achieving the highest level, and the best choice for creating miracles. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of breaking air persisted from noon until it was time for the ninja school to let out. When Kyomu sheathed his sword, he couldn't help but curve his lips upwards. With one draw of the sword, I can now unleash 7 slashes in an instant, getting closer to the goal of 9 strikes with one sword. Looking at Kakashi in the distance, Kyomu called out, "Stop training, let's go pick up our classmates from the ninja school." Chapter 42. Plus 200 Power Stones Milestone Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. Kyomu and his buddies gather together every day to practice, but their individual training goals are quite different. What drives them to gather together is the need to fill in the gaps and complement each other. For example, Obito relies on the abundant resources of the Uchiha clan's library for theoretical knowledge that no one else can match. Even if he can't understand it, as long as he memorizes it, Kyomu and Kakashi can handle everything for him. While helping Obito understand things, Kyomu, Kakashi, and even Guy and Rin can also absorb corresponding knowledge. Although there may be differences in digestion and understanding speed, these knowledge are learned after all, and ninja schools don't teach these things. Kyomu and the others are not the type to only take in and not give out. Kakashi shares his insights on swordsmanship and many experiences in chakra application, and Kyomu does the same. Even Guy has his own strengths, such as how to train his body without damaging his foundation, in which case Guy undoubtedly has the final say. As for Rin, let's just say she has her uses, but they aren't significant. But since Kakashi is willing, Kyomu and the others naturally won't say or do anything annoying. Moreover, in the field of medical ninjutsu, Rin also has her own advantages. You really can't afford to offend a doctor because no one can guarantee that they won't get injured and bleed in the future. Kyomu is very satisfied with the current composition of the group. The upper limit is handled by Kakashi, the details are perfected by Kyomu, the basics are given by Obito and Guy, and healing is left to Nohara Rin. With such a lineup, this small circle has formed a preliminary perfect closed loop. Everyone can get what they want from it and achieve a common pursuit. Making friends. Humans are social animals, and no one can refuse social interaction, although there are exceptions, but the result is no different from Uchiha's current situation. So Kyomu and the others, who can be considered normal people, all hope for social interaction and are eager to obtain the most sincere and honest emotions between people. A kind of friendship without betrayal or parting of ways, only sincere support and understanding, or is it love? But love is not for Kyomu now, it's rather this guy Obito, whose relationship with Nohara Rin is progressing quite smoothly. Once, Kyomu caught a glimpse of them holding hands and shared it with Kakashi. Obito is a person who doesn't get along well with Kakashi, and of course, Kakashi is the same. They warm up their brotherly relationship in the situation of arguing or fighting, which is their inherent pattern. As a result, Kakashi didn't miss a chance to tease Obito about it. Each time, Obito blushed, but could only bear it without enough confidence. As for Rin, perhaps under the jokes of everyone in the small circle, she gradually accepted her relationship with Obito. This is quite normal. When Kyomu was in school in his previous life, he had experienced it a lot. Some people who could have been together had a 50% chance of getting together due to the teasing of the people around them. As for the remaining 50%, they were very likely to never communicate again. But obviously, Obito and Rin are not part of that remaining 50%. Their relationship is progressing smoothly. The cheesy og love triangle has been resolved. Kakashi didn't hesitate at all, his only goal now is to surpass Aragami Kyomu, defeat Aragami Kyomu, and dominate Aragami Kyomu. Are we not going to spar? Kyomu shook his head. How about we have a proper match when you can fully use the Hotaki swordsmanship? Are you looking down on me? Kakashi bristled. He least wanted to hear Kyomu's excuses like this. Kyomu, do you really think you're ahead of me? It's not that, it's just really not possible. Kyomu persisted, I train with lethal moves, and I've only learned them, not mastered them, which is very dangerous. Kyomu was telling the truth. Sparring between veterans is a give and take, but sparring between beginners is just desperate. Can't hold back. Kakashi also understood the severity of it, but he remained silent for a moment. Then he looked up again. Then let me see your progress in training at least. You really like to make yourself unhappy. It's motivation, motivation. Kakashi straightened his neck. I need to know how far I am from you, so I can plan my next training. Have you made progress? Of course. Kakashi nodded proudly. See for yourself. Kyomu nodded, watching as Kakashi took 2 steps back and assumed an attacking stance. Zzzt. The sound of electricity flickered like a glimpse, barely audible to Kyomu's ears, and Kakashi had disappeared from his sight. Turning his head, Kakashi had already sheathed his short sword, and there were still traces of lightning chakra running on his wrist. Shoo! At this moment, Kyomu felt a coolness on his cheek, a clump of neatly cut hair strands, swaying and falling in the air. Seeing this scene, Obito couldn't help but take off his goggles and tilt his head, dropping 2 drops of eye drops. Rubbing his eyes, Obito finally found his voice. That was too fast. Kakashi's mouth curled up. Showing off in front of his brothers was one of life's greatest pleasures. Of course it was fast. Kakashi turned around casually, dispelling any doubts. With the efficiency of lightning release chakra, and combined with the unique techniques of my Hotaki swordsmanship, achieving such an effect is not difficult. Even the move I just used is only a basic part of the Hotaki swordsmanship. So amazing. Rin played along perfectly, earning her eye rolls from Kakashi. Kyomu, give Kakashi a run for his money. Since he couldn't do it himself, Obito could still play the support role. I believe you are stronger than Kakashi. Flattery, flattery. Kyomu seemed modest, but his lips were harder to suppress than a geyser. Just slightly stronger than Kakashi, just a bit. Then why are you still standing here? Kakashi stared straight at Kyomu, let me see how long your slight strength is. I suspect you're not being serious. Kyomu muttered, turning around and grasping the handle of his sword. Well, watch closely. I'll only demonstrate once today. The muscles in his right arm tensed instantly, his heart rate reaching its peak in an instant, and blood surged like rivers and seas, pushing all of Kyomu's physical attributes to their peak. His pupils contracted, and he drew his sword. Basic move, left/up. A dazzling light flashed and vanished, the wind inexplicably rose, and the explosion sound when breaking the sound barrier hammered into everyone's hearts like thunder. Thud, swoosh. The blade chakra formed by the wind pressure spread horizontally, not in the shape of a crescent moon, not a straight line, nor a cross, but a complex pattern with 3 more evenly spaced diagonal lines like the character. It was clearly just one slash. Kakashi's eyes widened, how is this possible? Is it a secret technique? But there's no trace of chakra being used, just simple body movements that only require 3 steps. Boom! The giant rock blocking the path directly shattered, and the gathered blade chakra dispersed at the same time. But the momentum remained undiminished, smashing the giant rock and carving out 7 deep grooves on the ground, plowing nearly 10 meters before finally stopping. Although Obito was also stunned, he and Might Guy were the first to rush over and support Kyomu. The scene of Kyomu being exhausted after yesterday's demonstration was still vivid in their minds. But today was different from yesterday. Kyomu simply waved his hand. Thanks, but I think I'm good. Rejecting the 2, Kyomu placed the ninja sword horizontally on his shoulder, with both hands resting on both ends of the scabbard, a carefree and unrestrained demeanor with a hint of the shadow of a wandering swordsman. How did you do that? Kakashi couldn't help but ask. The speed is fast enough to unleash 7 slashes in the blink of an eye, and the strength can support me to burst out such speed before the blink of an eye, and finally, the burst force ensures the subsequent attack intensity. That's too difficult. Hatake groaned. Do you have steel bones or something? Is this the power that the human body can burst out? Kyomu didn't deny it, but he understood that when the next month came, without the passive skill mastery in cold weapons, although his training results could be retained, the power would weaken by 200%. But Kakashi and the others didn't understand, there was nothing Kyomu could do about it. Damn, Kyomu just showed off again. Chapter 43. Plus 400 Power Stones Milestone Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. Saying farewell to Might Guy, Kyomu savored the knowledge of the 8 inner gates he had just memorized today, returning home under the cover of night. He was feeling somewhat weary, so after soaking in a hot bath, he felt considerably refreshed and quickly fell asleep. The next day, the sun rose as usual, and Kyomu met up with Kakashi at the edge of the Death Forest, continuing their training together. Kyomu's training regimen still focused on improving his speed, strength, and explosiveness in swordsmanship. Just like the previous days, the subsequent exercises were not particularly sophisticated, instead emphasizing simplicity and directness. Day after day, apart from occasional bickering and trivial matters, most of their time was spent on mundane and tedious training. However, Aragami Kyomu didn't feel any problems with this, instead, he found joy in it. Seeing his strength improve day by day was simply enjoyable for him. At the end of the month, Kyomu sheathed his sword and stood, looking at the chaotic scene before him and the ninja sword covered in cracks, feeling very satisfied with his performance just now. With a simple swing of the sword, visible sword energy crisscrossed, which might be one of the ultimate dreams of a man, and also one of Kyomu's dreams. However, the duration of the passive skill is still a bit too short. If only I had a year with it. He shook his head. Forget it, no use thinking about it. The urgent matter is still to give Kakashi a knock on the bamboo pole. Glancing down at the ninja sword covered in cracks, which seemed like it would fall apart with a slight touch, a cunning gleam flashed in Kyomu's eyes. However, Kakashi also noticed this and kept his distance from Kyomu like he was avoiding the plague, firmly refusing to give him a chance to knock his own bamboo pole. It was understandable. Kyomu had been catching Kakashi off guard and taking advantage of him, once or twice was fine, but with too many times, Kakashi would naturally react strongly. It was hard on him. Turning his head to look at Obito who was foolishly smiling with Rin, Kyomu immediately set his sights on Obito. The Uchiha clan's financial situation was still strong, even if Obito was not highly regarded within the Uchiha clan, they should not be too stingy with money. Obito, help me hold the ninja sword. I'm going to wash my hands by the river. With such glaring loopholes in his excuse, Obito surprisingly didn't have any suspicions and naturally took the ninja sword thrown by Kyomu. Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he had some evil ideas in his mind. Obito. What's up, Kakashi? Take out Kyomu's ninja sword and let me see. I feel like something's off with his sword. There's nothing wrong with it. Obito drew out the ninja sword, but only the hilt remained. It wasn't intentional, Kakashi, you should have seen, My sword. Kyomu happened to run over at this moment. My sword, how did it break like this? I'm sorry about that, I just wanted to take a look, but I didn't expect. Obito scratched his head awkwardly. I'll compensate you with a replica tomorrow, how about that? This was a gift from Kakashi, although it's cheap, flimsy, not sturdy enough, and not sharp enough, but it means a lot to me, Kyomu, give it a rest. Kakashi rolled his eyes. You didn't say that when you were freeloading this ninja sword. Without thinking much, Obito patted his chest and declared, Kyomu, I'll give you a better one. I knew you're my best buddy. Kyomu stepped forward and hooked shoulders with Obito. Actually, I wanted to change the ninja sword long ago, but I didn't have the money. I know about that. Obito smiled. It's just a small matter, I don't mind. What are you minding then? Kakashi quipped. Of course, it's you guys. Obito smiled shyly. As long as you're both here, I can handle anything. Kakashi didn't say anything further, Rin blushed and turned her head aside, while Might Guy was moved to tears. Don't get sentimental. Kyomu interrupted in time, making it seem like a farewell between life and death. Obito also timely changed the subject, knowing it was good to know about emotional matters but better to keep them to a minimum. In fact, it's like a farewell. Kakashi looked into the distance. Tomorrow is the final exam, then it's New Year's Day, and then... So, are you two planning to graduate early? Obito lowered his head sadly. Time flies, a semester has passed in the blink of an eye. Relax, we're just exploring ahead of you guys, not gone forever. Kyomu patted Obito's shoulder. Of course, you also have to work hard. I will, but I just can't catch up with you two bastards. Obito grinned. You may run ahead for a while, but wait, once I open my eyes, I'll catch up to you both. I'll have to beat you both 100 times to make up for it. Kyomu and Kakashi glanced at each other, both rubbing their hands in anticipation. Before you beat us, can we collect some interest? Kyomu suggested. Damn it, no hitting allowed. Obito protested. Obito ran, while Kyomu and Kakashi chased after him. In a matter of seconds, they had already run far ahead. Guy and Rin followed behind, laughing as the sound of their laughter gradually faded away. The final exam arrived as scheduled on the last day of the month. The exam composition remained the same, consisting of 3 parts: written test, ninja techniques, and sparring. The written test part was easy, just answering questions, such as the relationship between chakra and the human body, and calculating the angle and strength when throwing shurikens, and so on. Haha, I got 93 points. With a triumphant wave of his exam paper, Obito said, how many did you guys get? The classmates who had once mocked Obito as the shame of the Uchiha clan remained silent, while only Rin whispered her score to Obito. I got 1 point more than you. No wonder, Rin, that's like you. Kyomu and Kakashi couldn't stand Obito's smug look and immediately stepped forward to strike back. 93 points is quite high, isn't it, Kakashi? How much did you score? I don't talk to people who can't score 100. Kakashi crossed his arms, showing a cold expression as he turned away. That's fine, we can compare answers. I also got 100. Both Kyomu and Kakashi fell silent, while Obito and Rin stared at them with eyes full of resentment. Soon it was time for the second exam. Since it was a comprehensive examination of ninja techniques, it took a while. Nevertheless, Kyomu and Kakashi still stood out as the brightest stars, once again leading the field with perfect scores. Guy also made progress, although his talent in ninjutsu was poor, and his efforts in this area were inadequate. He barely passed, but this impressed some people. Obito and Rin's performance remained stable, with both of them scoring over 90 points, making them top students in the class. The last part was a sparring exam, leaning towards practical combat, but unfortunately, the highly anticipated showdown between the strong did not happen, which was regrettable. Teacher Shozo had arranged it like this for a reason. He didn't want the two he favored to attract too much attention, nor did he want their outstanding performance to pressure or overshadow the other students in the class. In conclusion, the final exam ended, and the title of the Konoha's twin geniuses was once again mentioned, with Kyomu and Kakashi becoming role models for other families' children. The two didn't feel much about it, continuing to eat, sleep, and train as usual. The only thing that fluctuated slightly was Kyomu's passive skill, which refreshed again in the early morning. Passive skill, Golden Brilliance. Skill description: the duration of the skill is based on the amount of money carried, passively enhancing learning ability, comprehension ability, and recovery ability by a multiplier. Note: 10,000 ryo as the starting multiplier, 1x, no upper limit. Skill duration: 30 days. Parting words: money is power. You may not have superpowers, but you can't lack monetary ability. Kyomu suddenly fell silent. This passive skill was great. If the wealthiest person in the ninja world obtained it, they could achieve many miracles in a month. But, looking around his modest home, Kyomu felt desperate. Selling this house might not even fetch him 100,000 ryo. He checked his wallet. Well, I only have a little over 3,000 ryo in liquid assets, and the rest are non-liquid assets. Then he looked at his passive skill and found that the multiplier was still 0, making Kyomu's mood even worse. It seems that real estate isn't included. He looked up at the pitch-black night sky. There's no way. I'll just have to tighten my belt this month. Well, Kakashi's and Obito's. Chapter 44. Year 43 of Konoha, New Year's Day. Children were running around the streets, and most of the ninja students on vacation were also mingling among them. The streets were filled with a variety of goods, and even Kyomu, passing by, could only stare blankly. Even if he saw something he liked, he didn't have the spare money for it. Nevertheless, gritting his teeth, Kyomu still bought some delicate little gifts and headed straight towards the Hotaki household. The gate was open, and Kyomu walked in smoothly. Facing him were several Konoha ninjas who had just come out of the house. Kyomu didn't know any of them, but judging from the Konoha ninja uniforms they were wearing, even the weakest among them belonged to the level of special jounin. There was no need to ask, these people were all here to visit Sakumo, a common occurrence. It was New Year's Day, it would be odd not to move around a bit. Kyomu walked into the room, grabbed a handful of fruits from the table, and naturally stood in a corner of the crowd, quietly waiting. Sakumo was busy, and Kakashi was not at ease either. With so many visitors, Sakumo was busy entertaining them, while Kakashi was busy serving tea and water, like a waiter. "Kyomu, you're here." Sakumo saw Kyomu and walked over directly, giving him face. All the people present followed his gaze and focused on Kyomu. "Teacher, Happy New Year." Kyomu offered the small gift he had in his hand. "Just a little something, I hope teacher won't mind." "Haha, as long as you're here, nothing else matters." Sakumo smiled, and the visiting crowd was silently surprised. Since when did Lord Sakumo takes disciples? Before anyone could ask, Sakumo took the initiative to introduce Kyomu to the people around him. "Aragami Kyomu, my newly accepted disciple." "Oh, I remember now." One of them slapped his forehead. "Isn't he the Kyomu who is referred to as the genius twin stars along with Kakashi?" "That's right, it's him. I have high hopes for him." Sakumo nodded, leading Kyomu to meet people. "This is Narashikaku, your senior, and also someone who has been a genius since childhood." "Lord Sakumo, you're too kind. When I was in school, I was nowhere near as good as Kakashi and Kyomu." "Shikaku, Happy New Year." Kyomu bowed slightly. Although Shikaku was a jounin, he was only 18 years old this year. Although his face had matured somewhat, it still carried a hint of youthfulness. "For the first meeting, I didn't prepare anything special, so please accept this." Shikaku took out a small box from his ninja pouch and handed it over. "This is a secret medicine from the Nara clan. It can save your life in critical moments." "Thank you, Shikaku." Kyomu naturally didn't refuse, promptly accepting it and bowing in thanks. "This is Yamanaka Inoichi, also quite remarkable." "Lord Sakumo, you're too kind. With you present, I dare not claim to be anything special." Inoichi smiled and started to bring out things. "Inoichi, Happy New Year." Kyomu hurriedly bowed in response. "I don't have such a good secret medicine as Shikaku, I can only give you some more money." Inoichi handed over a red packet. Kyomu's eyes lit up. In the moment he received the red packet, he knew it contained a substantial amount. "Thank you, Inoichi." Sakumo smiled and led Kyomu to meet more people. Kyomu's performance was still decent. By the end of the rounds, he had nearly hugged all the red packets. Money, money. And Sakumo's intention in doing so was not just for Kyomu to receive red packets, but more importantly, for him to meet people, a way to share his own connections with Kyomu. However, Sakumo could only pave the way. Whether Kyomu could grasp it in the future would depend on himself. At the same time, Kyomu's name and persona had officially entered the top circle of Konoha, which would bring him great benefits both now and in the future. At the very least, it would help him avoid many unpleasant things. After a round of introductions, Sakumo sent Kyomu away. Kyomu naturally accepted the red packets with courtesy and, together with Kakashi, became a waiter, bustling around as if it were his own home. After a busy half-day, the number of people coming to visit gradually decreased. Kyomu wiped the sweat from his forehead along with Kakashi and finally had time to talk. "You've received quite a few red packets." Kakashi's words carried a hint of sourness. "These should have been mine." "Big bruv, dot." Kyomu had no sense of shame. "Happy New Year." Kakashi was momentarily stunned, then his eyes were filled with smiles, his lips curving smoothly into a smirk, forming a V. "Good little brother, there's nothing much I can give you. I beg to differ, such as red packets." Kyomu reached out. "Big brother Kakashi, you wouldn't be unable to produce even 100,000 ryo, would you?" "That's not possible, is it?" "You rascal, are you here just for money?" Why else would I call you brother? Kyomu rolled his eyes. Hurry up and give me the red packet, or I won't call you brother. I'm older than you anyway. Kakashi rolled his eyes, but at the same time, he shut Kyomu up. Even if it's just 2 months, I am still older. You should call me big brother. Don't waste words, 10,000 ryo for a day of being called brother, no upper limit. If you're short of money, don't whine if I don't call you brother. You little rascal, just wait for me. Kakashi glared at Kyomu, turned around, walked into the bedroom, and soon came out sneaking with a small box. In order to make Kyomu call him big brother, Kakashi emptied his entire treasury. Mainly because Kakashi really wanted to dominate Kyomu, he couldn't do it in terms of strength for the time being, but in terms of address, he had to act quickly. Hey! Kakashi showed off his box. Call me big brother, all of these are yours. How would I know how much is in there? 50,000 ryo. Brother, big brother Kakashi. Kyomu immediately changed his tune, greedily snatching the box from Kakashi's arms. Don't you dare take it back. How could a big brother deceive his younger brother? You think I'm like you? Big brother Kakashi is the best to me, I've always known that. As long as there was money, Kyomu's mouth was as sweet as honey. But brother, this amount of money is only enough for me to call you for 5 days. It doesn't matter, but within those 5 days, every time we meet, you have to call me big brother, without exception. Kakashi grinned, feeling extremely satisfied. Remember, little brother Kyomu. You're the little brother. Kyomu thought silently, but he didn't refute it, considering the money. Kakashi was happy, patting Kyomu on the shoulder, and his eyes narrowed into slits. Making this guy Kyomu call him big brother for 5 days in a row, how satisfying. The entire day of New Year's Day, Kyomu didn't train, neither did Kakashi and others, marking a rare holiday moment of the year. After a whole day of hustling, Kyomu gained a lot, whether in terms of connections or money. The people who came to visit Sakumo were at least special jounin in strength, and most of them came from prominent families. While they might not be extremely wealthy, they were definitely not short of money. The red packets they gave to Kyomu totaled up to a whopping 150,000 ryo. Next was the financial support from Obito, amounting to 80,000 ryo, with no explanation or reason for borrowing to Kyomu, he simply laid out his entire fortune. Lastly, there was Kakashi. Not only did he take advantage of Kyomu, but he also gave the least, with just 50,000 ryo. The total harvest for the day amounted to 280,000 ryo, with a passive multiplier of 28 times. I made a fortune. Kyomu rolled around on the bed with the banknotes in his hands. The feeling of using money as a bedsheet made him unwilling to stop, the only thing missing might be a girl. After enjoying himself for a while, Kyomu carefully put away the 280,000 sum, sealing them into a scroll. Patting his ninja pouch, Kyomu tidied up his clothes and headed straight to Kakashi's house. Knowing that Kyomu was alone at home, Sakumo specially invited him to have dinner together, and Kyomu naturally wouldn't refuse. The relationship between teacher and disciple should be this close. And Kyomu had a premonition that Sakumo was about to teach him something really good. Chapter 45. Plus 600 Power Stones Milestone Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. The dinner for 3 was very heartwarming, and laughter never ceased. Kyomu could also feel that Sakumo genuinely valued him, and his fondness for his juniors was not pretended at all. After dinner, Kyomu and Kakashi took the initiative to clean up, while Sakumo leisurely picked his teeth on the side, watching the two busy themselves with a smile in his eyes. He even occasionally thought that if Kyomu were his own son, it wouldn't be too bad. Once the two finished cleaning up, Sakumo stood up and walked out into the courtyard. Kyomu and Kakashi exchanged a glance and followed him out, in perfect harmony. The strength you've shown by graduating early is already sufficient, but if you want to become true shinobi or strong individuals, both of you still have a long way to go. Sakumo stood with his back to them, his figure towering in the moonlight. Whether it's practical experience, combat skills, or tactical intelligence, you both are severely lacking. It's not that mental strength and chakra control are unimportant, but they require continuous practice and cannot be achieved overnight. So, there's not much I can teach you right now. I can only impart some of my experiences and engrave them into your bones in my own way. Kyomu knew immediately what was coming, he was about to speak when Sakumo turned around with a smile. Tomorrow then. He looked at Kyomu. Bring your ninja tools, all sorts of them. Come find me at daybreak. I understand, sensei. Kyomu nodded slightly, preparing to leave. Watching Kyomu leave the courtyard, Sakumo's smile deepened even further. He turned to Kakashi. Son, you should also prepare. Tomorrow, I won't hold back. Understood, father. Kakashi's face lit up with excitement as he turned and went back to his room. It had been a long time since he trained with Sakumo, and Kyomu's impending fate tomorrow was already playing out in his mind, haunting him relentlessly. Early the next day, Kyomu was fully armed, carrying various ninja tools in his pouch along with scrolls containing all his belongings. With a 28 times enhanced capacity, he was ready to take on any beating, even if it meant being beaten single-handedly. However, as soon as he stepped into the courtyard, Kyomu felt a chill down his spine. Turning around, he saw Kakashi lying on the ground. Reacting quickly, Kyomu drew his kunai and swept it backward, a fleeting blade of light slashing through the air, accompanied by a sharp gust of wind. Swish! The crescent-shaped blade chakra spread rapidly backward, its contained force and explosiveness alarming. But it didn't hit anyone, it was all in vain. Ambushed! Taking advantage of Kyomu's unguarded moment, Sakumo suddenly emerged from underground, forming the tiger seal with his hands, aiming it. Ouch! Damn it! Kyomu was sent flying, tears welling up in his eyes as he clutched his buttocks in agony, his hands covering the painful area. Sakumo, you old rascal! Meanwhile, Kakashi, lying on the ground, was now laughing uncontrollably, completely forgetting his own similar fate moments before. Sakumo wasn't just a father, he was even a proper teacher. And the case was solved, the 1,000 years of death was Sakumo's signature move, not Kakashi's. Kakashi was merely following in his father's footsteps. Thud! Kyomu landed on the ground, trembling with pain. But at this moment, Sakumo resumed his serious demeanor. When facing ambushes, you should not only pay attention to your back but also to your feet and above your head. Although your reaction is faster than Kakashi's, your technique is indeed powerful, but it's too ruthless, leaving no room for yourself and making it easy for others to seize opportunities. I understand, sensei. Kyomu gritted his teeth. But you're too much, aren't you? This way, you'll have a lasting impression, always being aware of your surroundings and not just your back. Sakumo stifled a laugh, but his words made sense. The lesson Kyomu and Kakashi received while being fingered up had some legitimacy. Glancing at Kakashi, Kyomu finally understood where his cunning nature came from. Like father, like son. It really hurts, damn it. After allowing the two a moment to recover, Sakumo restrained his laughter and led them deeper into the forest of death. They were technically leaving the village, as the forest of death was too vast to be entirely enclosed by walls. But in the presence of Sakumo, all they needed to do was inform the patrolling shinobi, and everything would be settled without needing official permission. This spot will do, the environment is quite complex. Sakumo casually tossed his tanto to Kakashi. You've been wanting to use this, now's your chance. Thank you, father. Kakashi took the tanto, treating it as delicately as he would his beloved wife, showing a gentle and affectionate demeanor. Come at me. Sakumo stood there casually, hands still behind his back, as he was facing two gusts of wind. Kyomu and Kakashi exchanged glances, then, in perfect synchrony, they advanced shoulder to shoulder towards Sakumo. As they neared him, they suddenly split apart. Heaven-cleaving sword. Kyomu unleashed the powerful move he had been practicing for the past month, exuding great momentum. Sakumo's eyes lit up as he watched the 9 intersecting blade chakra, feeling even more satisfied with Kyomu's abilities. This level of strength was far beyond that of their peers, surpassing even Kakashi and his own childhood self. However, in an instant, Sakumo shook his head. While the technique was flawless, Kyomu's timing was lacking, leaving room for improvement. Sizzle! Sakumo was enveloped in electricity, his lightning release chakra activating his body, granting him incredible speed and explosive power. He dodged swiftly and delivered a powerful kick to Kakashi's shoulder from behind, taking advantage of his attempt to ambush Kyomu. With one hand, he flipped his kunai, and in a swift motion, brought it down in a straight chop. Kyomu reacted swiftly, tightening his abdomen and lowering his waist to raise his ninja blade in defense. But at that moment, Sakumo suddenly stopped his attack, twisting his body in midair to strike Kyomu's armpit with the kunai. Just as he was about to succeed, he twisted his wrist, changing the stab into a punch, sending Kyomu flying. His heart pounded as he felt the impact, unable to breathe, the sensation of death looming dangerously close. When defending, pay attention to feints. The key lies in discerning subtle muscle movements and the opponent's attack angle and intensity. This is essential when facing opponents who change tactics, and defense always has vulnerabilities. Offense should be your priority when facing an enemy. With just a few words, Kakashi charged at Sakumo from behind once again, having learned quickly. He feinted a thrust and then struck ruthlessly from underground. Bang! With a swift kick from his left leg, Kakashi was sent flying far away. Sakumo scolded, "Idiot, you just learned the technique and used it against me. You need to be more adaptable." Undoubtedly, Sakumo's only vulnerable moment was when he was teaching while beating them up. After all, speaking always required some distraction, and Kyomu seized the opportunity to attack once again. Thud! The ground beneath his feet created a shallow pit as Kyomu charged forward like an arrow, his ninja blade swinging heavily once more. Still exerting full force. The blade glowed red, and the sweeping blade chakra turned crimson, the temperature not high enough to ignite the air but certainly capable of causing burns. Crimson Moon Slash! Sakumo furrowed his brows. Although the incoming chakra blade was powerful, Kyomu had not held back at all, leaving himself no room for maneuver. Dealing with weaker opponents meant a one-hit kill, and even slightly stronger opponents could catch them off guard. But when facing him, this was a fatal flaw. It needed to be corrected. Sakumo prepared to strike harder, his reaction lightning fast. He leaned back 45 degrees, allowing the blazing chakra blade to pass by his nose. Then, with both hands on the ground, he straightened his waist and grabbed Kyomu's ankle as he tried to dodge in mid-air. With a sudden burst of force, he slammed him down. Bang! Aragami Kyomu shattered into a cloud of smoke, disappearing in an instant. When Sakumo was momentarily stunned, then he realized. When you swung the Crimson Moon Slash, you used the transformation technique to disguise yourself and hid in the shadow of the blade. Quite a perfect feint, you learned it quickly. A smirk appeared on his lips, but Sakumo had already guessed Kyomu's possible hiding spots. I hope it's above my head. Hitaki Sakumo suddenly bent down, punching the ground, causing the earth to collapse. It was an impressive display of power, but he still held back. Indeed, above my head. Sakumo's mood lightened. Kyomu, you've surprised me more than Kakashi, and since you're so outstanding, as a father, I naturally have to test you a bit more. Straightening up, he twirled the tanto in his hand, covering it with the chakra of his lightning release, then launched it upwards. Upward thrust. The arc of lightning-charged chakra rose rapidly, perfectly intercepting Kyomu's descending Crimson Moon Slash. Just as the two attacks were about to collide, Kyomu's real body suddenly appeared behind Sakumo. He and Kakashi had formed a pincer attack. Sakumo quickly switched tactics, successfully blocking the attacks of the two, but his mind was in turmoil. When did this happen? He couldn't help but ask. Just as I swung the Crimson Moon Slash, I used the transformation technique to disguise myself and hid in the shadow of the blade. Aragami Kyomu slowly revealed the truth. It's easier to hide under the cover of light, making it a perfect strategy. Learning from experience and adapting in real time, you've truly grasped how to use feints in battle. Sakumo praised without reservation, then flicked Kakashi's forehead. Compared to Kyomu, you're as dull as a radish. Actually, it's not that much different. Kakashi's voice came from behind Hitaki Sakumo. I've also used shadow clones. Seeing the smoke from the disappearing clones in front of him, Sakumo felt slightly relieved, but he still didn't intend to go easy on Kakashi. There's some surprise, but not much, especially with Kyomu's brilliance ahead of you. You seem a bit mediocre, son. Kakashi lowered his head, flames burning in his heart. I'll become better, father. Good, let's set today as a deadline. Sakumo raised a finger. Come at me again, and let's see how quickly you can absorb combat experience. Kyomu and Kakashi exchanged glances, ignoring their fatigue, and once again attacked Sakumo with all their might. In the world of shinobi, adaptability and constant improvement were the most precious assets, without a doubt. Date Bayo. Chapter 46. Patreon is up, with plus 20 extra chapters for only $5. If you are interested you can check it out, but don't worry if you don't, the schedule here will be maintained as usual, and your power stones and reviews are always appreciated. www.patreon.com/Zalum. Thank you all for your support. Pay attention to conceal your attack intent. Kakashi. Where's your brain? Anyone can guess what you're going to do next. Kyomu. Hold back, until the opponent is on the brink of death, you must always reserve 3/4 of your strength for a counterattack. Don't make me repeat myself for the third time. Sakumo usually appeared gentle and refined, but when it came to teaching Kyomu and Kakashi, he was an absolute tyrant and executioner. Under his scolding and repeated beatings, a whole day and half the night's time made Kyomu endure both torment and agony. Fortunately, in the middle, Guy came to deliver food, providing a rare bit of solace through enjoying delicious meals. Sakumo was very friendly towards Guy. Firstly, because they seemed to be of a similar age as Kakashi, and secondly, he genuinely admired and respected Guy's character and unwavering personality. But to be honest, Sakumo was very proud. He could occasionally offer guidance to those like might do, who had the fool attribute, but he would not take them as disciples, let alone allow Kyomu's friends to come and observe during his teaching sessions. This was a serious and normal matter, and Guy and the others had no objections. Moreover, Guy coming to deliver food was simply to take care of Kyomu and Kakashi, with no other implications. This actually made Sakumo's attitude towards him even more gentle, secretly deciding to take care of Guy in his own way within his capabilities. Don't hang around here, hurry up and leave. Sakumo kicked Kyomu, have I not told you several times today? Don't stand here grinning like an idiot. Teacher, then I'll go home first. Kyomu, with a bruised and swollen nose, bowed in thanks and then ran off. With no outsiders around, Sakumo then turned to Kakashi. Son, are you blaming me for being heavy-handed? I've learned a lot, and it's deeply ingrained in my memory. Kakashi, covering his swollen left eye like a steamed bun, couldn't help but clench his buttocks. I won't make the same mistakes tomorrow. Don't wait until tomorrow, digest it well today, or... He looked up at the night sky, I'll cooperate with you to practice again. Kakashi nodded, feeling both pleased and disappointed in his heart. Although he didn't want to admit it, the gap between him and Kyomu had slowly widened. It had only been a few months, and he didn't dare to think about the next few years. Sakumo also noticed Kakashi's worries and patted him on the shoulder. Kyomu's talent is higher than yours, that's a fact, but if you at this moment... I haven't given up. Kakashi stood up. Please begin, father. I will never let Kyomu stay ahead like this. Sakumo nodded with a smile, then proceeded to give Kakashi some special attention. One was his disciple, the other was his son. Sakumo didn't favor either, but providing additional guidance to his son to practice what he learned that day was just human nature. He didn't play favorites, he had already balanced things as much as possible. But then again, Kyomu was indeed quite remarkable. Of course, a 28-fold increase in passive skill effects could also be considered a contribution. Don't reveal your own aura, including your breath, your killing intent, and even the impression you give to others. Learn to use any form of backup tactics in battle, including throwing, genjutsu, and even ninjutsu. Kyomu, you idiot! If you combine so many combat tactics, will you turn into a disabled person? Pay attention to coordination. Kakashi. Don't you know your own situation? Ninjutsu is meant for seizing opportunities, not for giving up attacks and standing dumbly in the distance making hand seals. Target, are you standing there to be a target? Kyomu. Pay attention to your stamina, don't always pursue power, at least not at this stage. Kakashi. You useless brat, did I teach you Hotaki swordsmanship like this? Sakumo's temper became increasingly irritable, and Kyomu and Kakashi suffered heavier beatings. By the end of the night, they could only walk with each other's support. But the next day, Kyomu bounced back to life, and Kakashi was almost the same. And as the imparting of combat experience deepened, Sakumo's scolding towards Kakashi changed to a mixture of praise and reproach. And Kyomu finally understood the real reason why Kakashi wore a mask. He was very handsome, but being teased by his father in such a way, Kakashi naturally couldn't stand it. As old matters resurfaced, Kakashi practiced even harder, putting pressure even on Kyomu. Even though he had surpassed Kakashi at this stage, who knew how the passive skills would change next month? If the passive was too lackluster, being overtaken would be a big joke. Seeing that his method was effective, Sakumo worked even harder to increase the intensity for Kakashi and Kyomu, both mentally and physically, each day. It was painful, but also joyful. It wasn't a masochistic tendency, but under Sakumo's blunt and straightforward teaching, Kyomu and Kakashi's combat experience skyrocketed without even shedding blood, and their level of cooperation increased day by day. Sakumo was naturally pleased, but kept it hidden and continued to nitpick at both of them. But when a top-tier shinobi from the cage level starts feeding you tricks from the basics, how could you complain? Just endure it. Occasionally, to take care of their bodies, Sakumo would intentionally pause the teaching progress for a day or two, specifically allowing Kyomu and Kakashi to spar for a day or two, enabling them to find inspiration and learn from each other. After all, always being crushed lacked a bit to form a solid foundation. Now came Kakashi's nightmare. In their sparring, he lost 9 out of 10 times, and his mentality almost faltered. But Sakumo was a good father who always stood up for Kakashi when he needed psychological guidance, gradually stabilizing Kakashi's mindset. Although he had to compete with Kyomu day and night, he also needed to compete in the future, and the outcome was uncertain. Kakashi, full of fighting spirit, was undoubtedly indirectly pushing Kyomu to the limit, forcing Kyomu to get 50,000 ryo from Obito. With a 32-fold increase in passive skill effects, in the first month of his time in training, Kyomu achieved a new achievement. Unlocked the character card of Hitaki Sakumo with maximum favorability. Kyomu's genius performance, coupled with his character and emotional intelligence, truly impressed Sakumo. But Sakumo couldn't always accompany Kyomu and Kakashi in training. Some dangerous missions that he couldn't refuse would suddenly appear and seek him out. End of the month. Sakumo concluded his tyrannical torment of Kyomu and Kakashi, donned his military uniform, and led his team out of the village under the cover of night. Who knew when they would return? Kakashi. 10 banknotes appeared in front of Kyomu's eyes. Kakashi raised his eyebrows and shook them twice. The sound of money was delightful and enticing. Although it was the last day of the month, Kyomu's love for money was undiminished. What if he needed it later? Big brother. Kyomu immediately changed his tone. Let's submit our early graduation application tomorrow, or submit it tomorrow. Kakashi crossed his arms, with a disdainful look in his eyes. Kyomu, this E-rank mission at the ninja school, we've already completed it ahead of schedule and exceeded expectations, achieving an unprecedented achievement. So, our next task is to quickly conquer the D-rank path of Genin and the C-rank path of Chunin promotion. And we must ensure that we are still the first. It seems that becoming a dung cleaning boy is inevitable for me. Kyomu shook his head, saying something very disappointing and inappropriate. What do you mean by dung cleaning boy? D-rank missions for Genin, apart from cleaning dung, it's picking up trash. What else do you think we will do? Kakashi didn't want to talk anymore, carefully thinking about becoming a manual laborer as a Genin was indeed quite humbling. Kyomu, we can choose not to carry out missions. Kakashi suddenly had an idea. Big brother, to become a Chunin, strength is one part, and the number of low-level missions completed is also part of the assessment. Kyomu shrugged, unless it's wartime, this is an iron law. If this doesn't work and that doesn't work, what do you suggest? Big brother, you decide, I'll follow your lead. Kyomu waved the banknotes in his hand. My service attitude is absolutely impeccable, isn't it, big brother? Kakashi's forehead veins twitched, and he slapped Kyomu's head. I'm asking you a question, answer honestly. You. In consideration of the money, Kyomu didn't argue with Kakashi like usual. We can choose to pick up missions after school in the afternoon, you get it. Kakashi smirked, immediately understanding Kyomu's meaning. Kyomu spread his hands, indicating that he didn't want to do it either. After all, being a dung cleaner was a job for 3 people, how could he and Kakashi do it alone? And with an extra person, it seemed like the cleaning could be done faster, would not? Chapter 47. Plus 800 Power Stones Milestone Extra Chapter. Thanks for the support. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters. Hokage's office. Amidst his busy schedule, Sarutobi Hiruzen held 2 applications for early graduation from the Ninja Academy, his face breaking into a smile resembling a chrysanthemum. It had been a long time since he felt this happy. Sakumo has successors, and so does Konoha. Hiruzen spoke highly of Kyomu and Kakashi, but apart from Kakashi, his impression of Kyomu wasn't very deep. After some thought, this Aragami Kyomu. I remember he was the kid who spaced out on the first day of school, and it seems he was taken in as Sakumo's disciple. Hiruzen chuckled, his eyes lighting up with a smile as he lit his pipe, taking a deep breath before exhaling slowly. Although Sakumo's actions are somewhat irregular, considering Kyomu's performance, there shouldn't be any major problems. He reminds me of Minato back in the day. With pen in hand, Hiruzen promptly signed the early graduation applications. Shikaku, arrange it. I'll personally attend the early graduation assessments for these two kids tomorrow. Yes, Hokage-sama. Shikaku left the Hokage's office to handle the small tasks assigned by Hiruzen. To be honest, for someone of Hiruzen's stature, Kyomu and Kakashi's early graduation was really a minor matter. If not for the sake of Sakumo, Hiruzen wouldn't bother with this, let alone attend the early graduation assessments amidst his busy schedule. Who wasn't a genius when they were young? The performance of ninjas who eventually reached the level of Jonin or higher in Konoha during their school days was no worse than Kyomu and Kakashi's. And every year, there were always 2 or 3 such individuals. Hiruzen had long become accustomed to it. But Kyomu and Kakashi, these two kids, still have outstanding performances. Hiruzen muttered to himself. Graduating from the Ninja Academy at the age of 5 is unprecedented. Who knows, maybe in the future. He shook his head shortly after, no longer dwelling on such thoughts, and focused on dealing with the various documents scattered on his desk. Today's work wasn't easy. Root Headquarters. The names Kyomu and Kakashi finally officially caught the attention of Shimura Danzo today. Graduating from the Ninja Academy at the age of 5. Holding the information in his hand, Danzo muttered to himself, although the future is uncertain, seeing them grow up, their achievements are promising. His mind moved, but Danzo quickly furrowed his brows. Sakumo, you move fast. Then he thought of something else, and Danzo's expression turned grim. He felt a threat, stronger than ever before. In Konoha, Hotaki's reputation overshadowed that of Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya. Even if the three combined, they could barely match up to Sakumo's reputation. But frankly, the title of the legendary Sunin of Konoha was bestowed by Hanzo the Salamander, while Hotaki Sakumo earned the title White Fang of Konoha through his own actions. The comparison was clear. Danzo had always wanted to become the Hokage of Konoha, so he naturally paid close attention to those most likely to become the 4th Hokage of Konoha. After analyzing each candidate, Danzo still focused on Hotaki from beginning to end. If Tsunade wanted to, no one in Konoha could surpass her. But she didn't want to, or perhaps she didn't care about such things. Women. Danzo shook his head. One dead brother and lover is enough to dampen her spirits, such a person is unworthy of becoming the village's Hokage. As for Jiraiya, he never had the desire to become Hokage, and his gaze had always been on Tsunade. He was also not a reliable candidate. And Orochimaru? Hiruzen, perhaps you still don't know what your good disciple Orochimaru is up to now, do you? Danzo smirked self-assuredly. What I can provide him, I can certainly take back, and even destroy him with my own hands. His gaze suddenly turned sinister. But it's Sakumo. I used to think you harbored ambitions for the position of Hokage, and now, your intentions are clear. Using the gimmick of your son's early graduation to stir up public opinion in the village, hoping to raise your reputation even higher? And feeling that having a son praised by everyone isn't enough to highlight your excellence, you've taken in a disciple who is almost as talented as Kakashi. Regardless of whom Danzo looked at, he carried a scent of conspiracy, because he was such a person himself. Sakumo, you've crossed the line. The position of Hokage can only belong to me, Shimura Danzo. A flash of cold, ruthless light flickered in his eyes, and Danzo swiftly completed a logical loop in his mind of Sakumo's desire to become Hokage, and had already harbored murderous intent. Bring someone here. Lord Danzo. Find all the information you can about Sakumo, organize it, and bring it to me when you're done. Yes, Lord Danzo. Danzo nodded, propping his chin with one hand, and with the other hand made a simple gesture before closing his eyes, sinking into contemplation. It wasn't easy to take action against Sakumo, it required careful planning and waiting for the right opportunity. As for dealing with Kyomu and Kakashi, Danzo wasn't ready yet, he didn't want to reveal his intentions so soon. Lurking, watching, waiting for the right moment to deliver a fatal blow to the opponent. But it's good to make a contingency plan early. Danzo opened his eyes again. If Sakumo never shows any weaknesses, then I'll have to target those around him. After pondering for a while, Danzo had a plan in mind. Hiruzen isn't at retirement age yet, so I'll wait a little longer. Even if I have to wait another 5 years, it's no big deal. After all, teacher has been dead for more than 20 years, and I've waited for more than 20 years, a little longer won't hurt. Closing his eyes again, Danzo sat upright on the chair like an old monk in meditation, and no one knew what he was thinking at the moment. In the early hours of today, Kyomu timely refreshed his passive skill. However, this passive skill seemed somewhat insignificant compared to the previous ones. Since it was random, good luck couldn't always be on his side. Passive skill, Living Forge. Skill description: during the skill activation period, consuming a certain amount of mental energy can create excellent, rare, legendary, or mythical grade weapons or armor. During the skill activation period, consuming a certain amount of mental energy can also refine the weapons or armor in hand, upgrading them to excellent, rare, legendary, or mythical grade based on the amount of mental energy consumed. During the skill activation period, consuming a certain amount of mental energy can also enhance the weapons or armor in hand, granting corresponding attributes based on the amount of mental energy consumed and the grade of the weapon or armor. Note: depending on the grade of the forged weapon, the amount of mental energy expended by the user varies. Consumption of mental energy can slowly recover, but excessive consumption may lead to the user's death. Skill duration: 30 days. Note: feeding the sword with one's own body, forging myths, even if one dies, the artifact remain eternal. Kyomu shrugged, not wanting to dwell on it. The passive skills covered a wide range of abilities, so it wasn't surprising to suddenly have a passive skill with a artisan inclination. Although the note of the passive skill sounded bleak, upon second thought, as long as he managed to create a divine artifact by risking his life, it would still be helpful for enhancing his strength. Even if he didn't create, refining or enhancing were also good choices. Moreover, according to Kyomu's speculation, creation consumed the most mental energy, followed by refining, and then enhancement. But the aspect of mental energy consumption is still too vague. Kyomu mused. Known mythical grade weapons or armor would require me to risk my life, burning all my mental energy. So, it can be inferred that forging, refining, and enhancing divine grade weapons or armor won't cost me my life. But the only issue is, how long does it take for the consumed mental energy to recover? Based on my constitution, do I follow a fixed recovery mechanism? If it's the latter, and if the interval for mental energy recovery is long. Clap. Feeling a tap on his shoulder, Kyomu snapped out of his thoughts. Kakashi, are you itching? I think it's you who's itching. Kakashi pouted. Seeing that father is not around, are you trying to slack off? It's not that, I was just thinking about what kind of graduation gift to give you. You're being this kind. A glimmer flickered in Kakashi's eyes, but he maintained a hard exterior and harbored some suspicion. You're definitely up to something wicked. You're saying we're not friends anymore. Are you really planning to give me a graduation gift? When a buddy speaks seriously, it's always trustworthy. Kyomu spread his hands. Come on, what does Kakashi want? Humph, as soon as I hear that, I know you're insincere. Where's the person who asks what the other wants for a gift? Kakashi turned away, looking indifferent. And you're so poor, what good thing can you give me? I don't want it. Watching Kakashi walk away to continue training, Kyomu couldn't help but shake his head with a smile. This guy, acting all proud. Just wait, when the time comes and you want something, I'll make you call me Godfather. Chapter 48. As dusk approached, Kyomu unusually ended his training session early, bidding farewell to Kakashi and the others, returning home alone. Lying on the rocking chair in the courtyard, Kyomu pondered what level of weapon he should forge. He had already ruled out the mythological and legendary grades, deciding instead to start with rare equipment. Glancing at the bowl of medicinal food and a red pill by his side, Kyomu felt somewhat relieved. Uncle Do's medicinal food was remarkably effective, helping to replenish his energy to some extent. And the red pill, a gift from Shikaku, was a life-saving secret medicine from the Nara clan, serving as an excellent backup. Come, let's forge a rare grade weapon following the blueprint of the White Fang's Tonto. With a thought, a wave of normally invisible and intangible energy flowed through Kyomu's body, converging towards his palms. A faint purple light flashed, and Kyomu, lowering his head, could clearly see in the center of the light a metallic block taking the shape of a weapon embryo. As the mysterious power representing his energy continued to surge, Kyomu visibly grew weary in both mind and body. It feels like running 5 kilometers under full weight, or even more exhausting. Kyomu experienced real-time feedback from his body, silently calculating the consumption of his energy. For nearly half an hour, the weak light emitted by the purple sphere persisted until the weapon embryo inside was fully formed. With a trembling, the purple sphere suddenly brightened, illuminating Kyomu's courtyard, causing him to involuntarily close his eyes and tears to flow down his cheeks from the strain. Phew! Sighing heavily, Kyomu slumped back in the rocking chair, feeling as if his body was filled with lead, making him reluctant to move a single finger. Phew, luckily I'm conscious, but it feels like I've been awake for 3 days and nights, too exhausted to sleep now. Muttering to himself, Kyomu reached out and grabbed a piece of meat to eat. A large bowl of medicinal food was quickly consumed, and with the digestion accelerating, in less than half an hour, Kyomu felt about 20% recovered. Kyomu was now certain that the replenishment of his energy mainly relied on his own efforts and external assistance. This was undoubtedly good news. After resting for a while, Kyomu picked up the White Fang's short sword he had just crafted. Its appearance was ordinary, almost identical to the White Fang's short sword. Its sharp blade and non-reflective white blade revealed its extraordinary nature. A weapon of this caliber, borrowing the words from the neighbor, should belong to the ranks of great swords. Kyomu lightly tapped the blade, listening to its resonance. It feels like it's a notch above the White Fang in my teacher's hands. And holding it in my hand, I can establish some inexplicable connection with it. Is this an additional benefit from the forging method? T/N, who's the neighbor of Naruto? One Piece. Cradling the short sword and closing his eyes, Kyomu, under the gentle swaying of the rocking chair, carefully sensed the information it wanted to convey. After a while, Kyomu sighed and opened his eyes. I can vaguely sense its sword language, but it lacks spirit, only intent, clearly missing the spiritual aspect. It can only be said that this is the difference between rare and legendary weapons. But even so, the sword created by my living forge passive skill is inherently half a grade higher than weapons of the same level in the ninja world. This was another pleasant surprise, and Kyomu's mind became more active. If I strengthen it and give it a suitable and unique characteristic, then even though it still won't match the top-tier ninja world artifacts, it will still have a fighting chance. Putting away the newly forged ninja sword, Kyomu smiled. Kakashi, as my adopted son, you're destined not to escape. Who made Dad love you? The next morning, Kyomu got up from bed. Furrowing his brow and rubbing his temples, his mental state resembled that of a hangover, causing him considerable discomfort. And his muscles were extremely sore, as if he had fought 3 wild horses all night without rest. I guess even with Uncle Do's medicinal food, I'll need another day and night to fully recover. With a clear idea in mind, Kyomu felt reassured. If I were to forge a divine artifact out of thin air, it would likely confine me to bed for a week like a cripple, but if... Turning his head to look at the standard-issue steel ninja sword by his bedside, reforging should save some energy, but I think if I'm going to do it, I should do it properly, make it perfect in one go, whether in design, grade, or characteristics. The passive skill's duration was only 1 month, and Aragami Kyomu didn't want any regrets. Slowly calculating in his mind, Kyomu said to himself, first, forge the artifact I need. If there's time left, prepare something for Obito, Guy, and Rin as well. Dragging his tired body, Kyomu got up, got dressed, washed up, and then listlessly headed out. Kyomu, what did you do last night? Why do you look like a ghost? Kakashi's first glance at Kyomu was one of astonishment, even a hint of reproach. Today's early graduation assessment is important. If you look like this, what if you fail? Son, can't you just wish me luck? Say that again. Kakashi became anxious. Kyomu, are you asking for a beating? Remember what you just said. Kyomu didn't explain much, just went on his way to the ninja school. Kakashi followed behind with a sulky expression, occasionally shooting daggers at Kyomu. This annoying guy dares to joke about anything. Hey, it's quite grand. Kyomu scanned the stands, with almost all of Konoha's top figures present, including Sarutobi Hiruzen, and even Danzo. However, it was evident that Homura's attention was mostly on Kakashi, paying little heed to Kyomu. Kyomu wasn't worried in the least. Even if he were targeted by Danzo, he wouldn't have any problems within 2 years. While Sakumo doesn't do a mistake, Danzo would only lie low and wouldn't choose to act. But by that time, Kyomu would already have the ability to protect himself, and even if any conspiracies arose, he could handle them calmly. Let's begin. Hiruzen pointed to Kyomu and Kakashi, simultaneously gesturing to two other Konoha Chunin who were ready nearby. Real combat was an important criterion for early graduation from the ninja school, and Hiruzen didn't have much time to evaluate the two based on their academic lessons. Keep it simple, straight to the point. As long as they could win and win handsomely, Kyomu and Kakashi could graduate early from the ninja school. Kakashi was the first to step up, effortlessly defeating one of the Chunin. Kakashi's style is reminiscent of Sakumo's. Whether it's timing, angle of attack, or other abilities coordination, it can be described as perfect. He's indeed outstanding. Sakumo raised a good son. Danzo's eyes darkened. Sakumo not only has remarkable military achievements but also teaches the next generation with great skill. Indeed, I've always admired Sakumo. He's a person who can carry the heavy responsibility. Danzo didn't respond, tapping the armrest of the chair with one hand, already determined in his previous thoughts. But when it came to Kyomu, his performance made Hiruzen furrow his brows. Though Kyomu won cleanly, he gives off a feeling as if there's something wrong with his body. Overexploiting his physical potential, that's probably what it looks like when one's body is in trouble, Danzo murmured. I wonder if it's Sakumo's impatience or Kyomu's physical condition itself. Hiruzen waved his hand. Forget it, I trust Sakumo will instruct these two well. Standing up, a gentle smile appeared on Hiruzen's face. I announce that Hitaki Kakashi and Aragami Kyomu have successfully passed the early graduation assessment. Now, I will personally award the graduation certificates and the ninja headbands to both of them. Announcing the results grandly, Hiruzen handed the prepared certificates and headbands to the two, offering some words of encouragement. Kakashi was excited, and Kyomu pretended to be excited. Their expressions were almost identical. Haha, work hard, you two. You're the twin stars of the village, setting a record. Don't let people down. With these final words, and a pat on their shoulders, Hiruzen left with the others. So, we're graduating now. Kakashi seemed to still be living in the atmosphere from earlier, and we're being personally awarded certificates and headbands by the Hokage. It's a rare honor. Kyomu's spirits lifted slightly, gaining some strength in his voice. Call me Dad. Kyomu, how could you? Ding! A short sword, a refined version of the White Fangs, suddenly appeared in front of Kakashi, instantly shutting him up. Kakashi had a keen eye, able to discern quality. Even in a split second, he compared the sword in front of him with the one his father held. The conclusion was, the one in front of him seemed even better. Rubbing his eyes, Kakashi looked at the short sword, then at Kyomu, opening his mouth in disbelief. Call me Dad, and it's yours. Kyomu had already raised the corners of his mouth, a kind of madness spreading. Kakashi struggled with his expression but couldn't muster any defiance. He really wanted it too badly. Dad. Between dignity and a seemingly perfect short sword, Kakashi chose the former. Ha ha, ha ha ha. Kyomu burst into laughter, cheerfully handing the ninja sword to Kakashi, his expression gradually becoming serious. Give it a name, Kakashi. Yukihime. Kakashi caressed the short sword, entranced, and a beautiful name slipped out of his mouth, like giving a nickname to a girlfriend. Yukihime, not bad. Kyomu nodded, embraced Kakashi, who was still in a daze. Let's go, my rebellious son, Dad will take you home. Yes, Dad. Kakashi instinctively responded, wanting to be angry but finding himself unable to. Looking at Yukihime in his hand, he couldn't help but smile foolishly. A good sword, really a good sword, and it's even a top-notch one that's not inferior to the White Fang or even better. Just one more Dad, totally worth it. Chapter 49. Plus 1000 Power Stones Milestone Extra Chapter. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters for $5. Shout out to my Patreons. Thank you. Putting a crocodile skin scabbard on Yukihime, adjusting the forehead protector, tightening the combat suit, Kakashi looked at himself in the mirror, unable to suppress a smirk. Good morning, Kakashi, a Leaf Village genin. He turned around, ready to head out. However, as he glanced back, Kakashi noticed Yukihime behind him once again. Unable to resist, he grabbed the hilt with one hand, carefully feeling its texture before finally leaving, content. Because Kyomu and Kakashi's team leader was Sakumo, but Sakumo was away on a mission, so the two of them could only go together to the Hokage's office to pick up the simplest D-rank mission. Although they were reluctant, they couldn't break the rules. Let's go find the lost cat. Kyomu waved the mission file in his hand, calling out to Kakashi. You seem more energetic today than yesterday. Kakashi couldn't help but size up Kyomu. I wonder what happened to you yesterday. Brat. Kyomu glared at Kakashi. Do you think I wanted to? If it wasn't for preparing a graduation gift for you, would I be so listless? Kakashi hesitated for a moment, then awkwardly turned his head away. Well, thank you. That's more like it. And don't worry, I'll make up for your graduation gift, Kakashi hastily added, his gaze sincere. As you wish, Kyomu shrugged, but if you are willing, I hope you can take care of those boring D-rank missions for me this month. Are you trying to slack off? No, I just don't feel well. Kyomu shook his head. I don't know why, I'm not feeling very energetic. Your physique and mental strength have always been stronger than mine, how come all of a sudden? Maybe I've been too tired the past few months, and my body wants me to take a break. Kyomu handed the mission file to Kakashi. Do the D-rank missions for me for a month, consider it my graduation gift, how about that? After glancing at Kyomu, Kakashi wanted to refuse, but thinking of Yukihime on his back and remembering Kyomu's listless appearance yesterday, he reluctantly agreed. Fine, taking the mission file handed over by Kyomu, are you going home to rest now? Yeah, I'm exhausted. Kyomu waved his hand and turned to leave, so I'll leave it to you, Kakashi. Watching Kyomu gradually disappear, Kakashi reached out to stop him but hesitated and let him go. He actually wanted to ask where Kyomu got Yukihime from. But he felt that even if he asked, Kyomu might not tell him, so he decided to bury the question deep in his heart. Unable to resist, he touched the hilt of Yukihime again, closing his eyes in enjoyment, unable to resist drawing it out. It's really beautiful. Kakashi played with it for a long time, then resheathed Yukihime. Finally, he glanced in the direction of Kyomu's house before heading off alone to carry out the D-rank mission of finding a lost cat. With all the D-rank missions for this month handed over to Kakashi, Kyomu finally had time to start forging his own divine weapon. As for whether he would fall into a coma and die at home due to excessive spiritual consumption, Kyomu was not worried. His friends were very reliable. Leaving a note, Kyomu sat by the bed and began to forge his own divine weapon. Familiar mystical powers began to surge, flowing through his limbs and into his palms, slowly forming a faint golden glow. Seeing the weapon embryo enveloped in the glow, Kyomu smirked, closing his eyes and concentrating. In his mind flashed the shape of the weapon he had planned long ago. Tang Dao sword. It had always been Kyomu's dream sword, and now that he could forge it himself, he naturally wanted to make it perfect. However, in terms of external appearance and details, Kyomu didn't need to add anything unnecessary. The black minimalist domineering style, even a little extra decoration would ruin its overall aesthetic. So, Kyomu only needed to focus all his efforts on perfecting the practical performance of the black Tang sword. Slowly, Kyomu began to sweat on his forehead, and his body couldn't help trembling slightly, consuming a lot of spiritual energy. But the sword embryo and scabbard, enveloped in the faint golden glow, had just taken shape at this moment, and there was still about 2/3 of the way to go before they were completely finished. The total length of the blade is 90 centimeters, which is the most comfortable length for drawing the sword for a slash. The blade length is controlled at 62 centimeters, leaving a 28 centimeter long handle that can be used single-handedly or with both hands in battle. Silently reciting, the black Tang sword forged by Kyomu had completely completed its external shaping, leaving only the need to perfect the combat details. Because it's a straight blade, toughness is of paramount importance, followed by sharpness and weight, making it more suitable for chopping, which complements the sword techniques I've been practicing before. Lastly, regarding the characteristics of the divine weapon, Kyomu had also long thought about it. Unlike the Uchiha clan's divine weapon, Uchiha's war fan, with its rebound characteristic, Kyomu valued the cutting characteristic more. The characteristic of the divine weapon is to cut through everything. Thinking of this, Kyomu was shocked to find that the faint golden glow in his hand was deepening, clearly aiming for a mythical level, which frightened him into changing his words immediately. It's not cutting through everything, it's cutting through any ninjutsu attack primarily formed by Chakra. Kyomu quickly tried to cover the loophole, and the faint golden glow in his hand finally stabilized. It's a divine weapon, not a mythical one. He saved himself, but... Just as he managed to dispel the faint golden glow, the black tang sword that bounced out from it hugged in his arms. Kyomu's eyes rolled back, and his consciousness fell into silence. Thud. As his body fell onto the bed, twitching a couple of times, his breathing became irregular and weak. Dash. Unconsciously, time passed into the afternoon. Kakashi did the work of 3 people alone, completing 3 D-rank missions in one go. Finding a cat, fetching water, picking up trash, these tasks were completely unrelated to the ninja profession, and Kakashi felt like dying. It felt like being used as a laborer. Let's see how Kyomu is resting. Kakashi stepped up his pace, heading towards Kyomu's house, regretting his agreement and hoping to find a way to back out. Kakashi really didn't want to do those low-level missions, and he wanted to drag Kyomu into it, letting him experience the frustration he had felt before. Arriving at Kyomu's house, Kakashi climbed over the wall directly, feeling like a thief. Kyomu. No one answered his call, and Kakashi couldn't help but furrow his brows. This guy, why is he so quiet today? Seeing the tightly closed door, Kakashi decided to enter through the window, just like a ninja would. That's quite a unique sleeping position. Kakashi saw Kyomu lying on the bed, the corners of his mouth beneath the mask couldn't help but curve up. Hey, stop pretending to sleep. Just because of that, you won't be able to avoid doing D-rank missions with me tomorrow. Approaching Kyomu, Kakashi said, yes, I came back, but I won't return Yukiheim. Can you? His words stopped abruptly, and Kakashi's face changed drastically. The Kyomu lying on the bed, who he had propped up, had a complexion as pale as gold paper, his breathing irregular and almost imperceptible. Kyomu, you. His peripheral vision caught sight of a piece of paper on the bedside table, and Kakashi quickly grabbed it and scanned it at lightning speed. Don't take me to the Konoha hospital. There's a life-saving secret medicine in the bedside table, given to me by Shikaku. Feed it to me and then find Rin, Obito, and Guy to come over. Remember, don't make a sound, don't make a sound, don't make a single sound. Without much thought, Kakashi, unwilling to go against Kyomu's wishes, quickly opened the bedside table and took out the red pill, stuffing it into Kyomu's mouth. Holding Kyomu's chin, Kakashi shook his head up and down, seeing him making swallowing movements, then finally breathed a sigh of relief. With the medicine ingested, Kyomu's complexion visibly improved, and his breathing gradually became stronger and smoother. Kakashi's heart, which had been in his throat, finally returned to its place. Finally, after looking at Kyomu again, Kakashi, following his instructions, left through the window to find Rin, Obito, and Guy. But as he ran frantically, Kakashi couldn't help but picture the black tang sword that Aragami tightly hugged in his arms. It's really cool, and so domineering. Chapter 50. Patreon is up, with plus 20 extra chapters for only $5. If you are interested you can check it out, but don't worry if you don't, the schedule here will be maintained as usual, and your power stones and reviews are always appreciated. www.patreon.com/Zalum. Thank you all for your support. Kyomu had a long and terrifying dream. In the dream, he was bound all over, and beneath him was an endless abyss, with no sound, no light, and nothing but water inside. His body gradually sank, and the only light was a beam left above his head, the only way out of this abyss. Struggling, Kyomu desperately tried to ascend, but always, just as he was about to surface, he would fall back into the abyss below due to exhaustion. This cycle repeated countless times, until a flash of red suddenly descended, warm as a spring feeling like a mother's hand, gently stroking Kyomu's body, giving him strength. Towards the light, charge! Ah! Huff, huff, huff! Kyomu suddenly sat up from the bed, gasping heavily, while lowering his head to check, the fear in his heart suddenly dissipated. His own artifact, the black tang sword, was still there. Falling back onto the bed, but his head, back of his neck, and his back were gently supported by someone. Struggling to lift his eyelids, "You're here again. I'm relieved." Rin sat at the bedside, her eyes full of worry and tension, while on the other side of the bed sat Kakashi and Obito. The 3 of them were the ones who had just supported Kyomu. Fainted again. Kakashi couldn't help but frown. Kyomu just woke up, and for some unknown reason, his body is severely depleted. It's already a great situation that he's awake. Rin sighed, if it weren't for that life-saving secret medicine, Kyomu might have been in a coma for 2 days. This serious? Wiping the cold sweat from Kyomu's forehead, Rin gently laid him back on the bed and tucked him in, then she opened her lips. You may not have experienced chakra exhaustion, and neither have I, but Kyomu's current condition is no different from chakra exhaustion. According to some medical notes, in general, for people with decent physical fitness, they would be in a coma for about a week, while only those with strong constitutions can wake up in 2 to 3 days. Thanks to Kyomu's decent physique, coupled with the help of the life-saving secret medicine, he managed to wake early, otherwise. Shaking her head, Rin glanced outside the window, unable to help but feel anxious. Why hasn't Guy come back yet? Here, I bought it. As soon as Rin finished speaking, Guy rushed into the room, barely catching his breath, and handed over what Rin needed. These are what you wanted, and I was worried it wouldn't be enough, so I bought twice the amount. That's enough. Rin nodded, forcing herself to calm down, and brought out all she had learned. Obito, you prepare the medicine according to this ratio. Kakashi, you go set up the intravenous pole. Guy, I'll leave it to you to give Kyomu a full body massage, and for acupoints, follow this chart. Rin's arrangements were well organized, and the 3 boys swiftly took action, cooperating with her to handle everything properly. Wiping off the sweat on his forehead, Rin looked at the drip bottle, feeling somewhat excited, and also with a sense of satisfaction and surprise. She had never thought that her self-taught medical skills would be used for the first time on her friend. But she hadn't made any mistakes, not at all, everything was successful, and she didn't let her friend down. Hey! All done, just wait for Kyomu to wake up again. He won't faint again, will he? He shouldn't, his body's depletion is being replenished at a relatively fast pace with the assistance of nutritional supplements. Kakashi, Obito, and Guy finally relaxed, feeling as if all their strength had been drained, almost collapsing to the ground. Kyomu's sudden fainting had exhausted almost all of their energy, and they had just finished dealing with it. With no danger, they quietly awaited Kyomu's awakening. At this moment, Kakashi's gaze fell once again on the black straight sword. Different from before Kyomu woke up, it was no longer tightly held in his embrace, but rather released. Clearly, after seeing the people he needed, Kyomu relaxed his vigilance. That sword. Kakashi reached out. Obito, pass it to me. That's Kyomu's. It's okay, just let me take a look. Kakashi shook his head. Moreover, after seeing us, he released the black straight sword he held tightly. He probably doesn't mind. Obito nodded and bent over to pick up the black straight sword placed at the bedside. But just as he picked it up, Obito's eyes suddenly narrowed. So heavy. Exerting force with one hand, Obito struggled to lift it, dragging it with both hands and handing it over to Kakashi sitting at the end of the bed. So heavy. Kakashi was also surprised, but when it was by Kyomu's side, it didn't seem very heavy. I don't know, but when I touched it, I clearly felt its resistance. Obito looked at his palm. It's as if the sword's voice passed into my heart through my hands, a strange feeling. I felt the same way, and it was very strong. Although Kakashi said so, his eyes shone brightly. Sure enough, a good weapon must combine extreme violence and extreme aesthetics to achieve perfection. Although this sword didn't want Kakashi to touch it, it would only be uncooperative but unable to refuse. Placing the black tang sword on his knees, Kakashi stroked the dull black scabbard, suddenly feeling that the fragrance on his back wasn't as fragrant as before. The craftsmanship was so delicate that it felt like human skin when touched. Yukihime on his back suddenly trembled twice, seeming to scold Kakashi for his fickleness. Kakashi suddenly felt it, showing a trace of embarrassment on his face. But before Kakashi could react, the black sword placed on his knees also trembled slightly. The turmoil in his heart was completely calmed, and Kakashi looked at the calm Yukihime behind him, feeling a mixture of emotions. Yukihime was actually afraid and anxious. This. In the next moment, Kakashi felt a little annoyed in his heart. Although you are a good and excellent knife, why are you so fierce to my Yukihime? I want to see what extraordinary things you can do. Kakashi's eyes widened, one hand holding the scabbard, the other hand holding the hilt. Did not draw. No matter how hard he tried, it remained the same. His forehead vein twitched, and Kakashi felt the mockery of the sword in his hand, scolding him for being overconfident. Obito, help me out. Kakashi sought assistance from outside. Obito was initially hesitant, but when he touched the scabbard and also felt disdain from the sword in his hand, he didn't care anymore. 2 people couldn't pull out this sword? Ridiculous. Kakashi, are you slacking off? Did you skip your meal? The two bickered, but the intersection between the scabbard and the hilt remained motionless, and what was truly laughable was them. Strange, really strange. Obito scratched his head. This sword is different from others, it's like it has life and consciousness. Not to mention seeing one, I haven't even heard of something like this. Kakashi still didn't want to give up. He still had some strength in his heart and wanted to regain the scene for his snow. Guy, you come too. Kakashi sought outside help again. It was just a sword, he didn't believe that three people couldn't pull it out. But not believing was one thing, and the reality was another. Kakashi and the others used all their strength, but the scabbard of the black sword remained motionless. What are you doing? Kyomu's weak voice came from behind the three, causing Kakashi and the others to stiffen. Nothing. Kyomu, you're awake. Kakashi scratched his head, letting go and running to the bedside. It's Kakashi who insisted we help unsheath that sword. You won't be able to pull it out with brute force. Kyomu smiled, barely raising his right hand. Bring it here, I'll show you. It's heavy, you'd better. Kakashi is right. You've just woken up, so it's better not to talk or make vigorous movements. Ren also chimed in. It's okay, Yai is different from other swords. Seeing Kyomu's insistence, Kakashi didn't say more, and brought the black sword over with both hands. Before handing it over to Kyomu, Kakashi couldn't help but ask, is it called Yai? Isn't it nice and domineering? Kyomu held Yai in his hand, the appearance of lifting it lightly made Kakashi involuntarily raise an eyebrow. Don't you think it's heavy? It's light as a feather in my hand. Kyomu's mouth curved in a smile, feeling the jubilation and excitement of Yai, and it's connected to my bloodline. Bending his fingers lightly, the blade was unsheathed halfway, shining coldly, the surrounding air temperature suddenly dropped, and even the closest Obito felt the sharpness coming towards him. It's extraordinary. Kakashi and Obito said in unison, how did you get it? I met an old man on the road, who said he saw my bones were extraordinary, and that I had the potential to become a god in the future. Kyomu made up a random story, leaving Kakashi and the others with mouths agape, completely disbelieving, but they didn't ask further. Who doesn't have secrets? But not asking didn't mean they couldn't tease Kyomu, making him feel awkward. Since that's the case, can I have one too? Obito raised an eyebrow. Call me father, and you're worth having one. Hey, you still owe me a lot of money. Obito naturally didn't want to lose out on seniority, something men cared about a lot, and besides, Kakashi. Slap. Kakashi suddenly slapped Obito on the back of his head. Shut it. Kyomu laughed, and it was obvious that Kakashi was anxious. Good brothers naturally enjoyed good fortunes and faced misfortunes together. The daily comedy between the two friends once again played out, chasing and running out of the room. Kyomu, don't mind them, just rest well. Rin was still as gentle as ever, but her hands were firm. Pressing Kyomu onto the bed, tucking him in, she quietly looked at the medicine bottle. You sleep a little longer, I'll watch here, and if you're hungry, you'll have to wait a while before you can eat. Kyomu nodded, closing his eyes peacefully, entering into a deep sleep. And the wool hidden within Yai, the artifact with spirit, also took advantage of the opportunity to sneak into Kyomu's thoughts. Artifacts had spirits, and it was eager to be close to Kyomu. End of chapter.
Thanks for listening.